Chapter 221. The True Fate World is now complete. The moment the primordial chaos bead appeared, an overwhelming force surged outward. A misty gray aura spilled from the primordial chaos bead, completely enveloping the black gold energy. Then, the primordial chaos bead dragged the black gold energy into the True Fate World. Inside this gray fog, no matter how violently the black gold energy struggled, it could not escape. Heaven is black, earth is yellow, this is the color of the world, and the black gold energy is the essence of the earth. At that moment, within Su Zimo's True Fate World, everything began to transform. Winds swept through the sky, clouds surged, and thunder rumbled all around. The black gold energy fused with the yin-yang energies, weaving themselves into the fabric of the world. The laws of this world became complete. Everything began to evolve in an orderly manner. The sun and moon began their rotations. Day and night arrived as they should. The once barren earth became fertile, ready to grow life, to nurture creation. Yin and yang gave birth to the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The world now contained all kinds of elemental properties. The 4 seasons became distinct: spring breezes, summer heat, autumn rains, and winter snow. Through this process of endless transformation, the world became a true world. The river of fate began to flow high above in the void. For the first time, it began to truly operate. And deep within the void, a place of nothingness, a powerful force brewed. Strange fluctuations appeared, as if something was about to be born. This was the heavenly Tao of this world, preparing to emerge. The purpose of the heavenly Tao was to ensure the stability and proper function of the world. It would suppress anything that posed a threat to the realm. The world wasn't vast, not yet. Since this was a newly birthed realm, its total size was no larger than the eastern continent. But as the world evolved and as Su Zimo's strength grew, the size of his world would also expand accordingly. In its infancy, most of the world was still ocean, with a few scattered land masses rooted within. From the outside, Su Zimo's True Fate World looked like a blue sphere, 70% covered in sea, with only 30% land. At this early stage, the world had no living beings. This is a new era. The first page of its story has turned. Let this world be named God World. Su Zimo declared from the sky, his voice majestic and commanding. His voice echoed through the empty heavens. Time now existed here. The world began to move forward. This was its first day, its first hour, its first minute, its first second. From this moment forward, the God world truly existed. Let this era be named the Primordial Genesis Era, Su Zimo added. At that moment, he was like a god of creation, his will shaping the world, his voice dictating its reality. God World, Primordial Genesis Era. A mighty torrent of history began to flow. All was born from nothing. The world was formed. The land was named. The era began. This was a moment destined to be remembered. Now that the world was established, a new challenge lay before Su Zimo: how to create life within it. Life did not appear out of nowhere. Just because a world was formed didn't mean living creatures would emerge automatically. There was a myth in the primordial heartlands about the origin of life. A tale of supreme yang solar illumination and supreme yin netherglow, whose fusion birthed the first spirit beasts. Some of those beasts later evolved into humans. Su Zimo wasn't sure how true that story was, but he already possessed supreme yin netherglow, which he had obtained in the Nether Dragon Ravine back at the true martial sacred ground. Now, he just needed to find supreme yang solar illumination. If the two were merged, perhaps life would naturally begin to appear in his world. The problem was, neither supreme yang solar illumination nor supreme yin netherglow appeared in the River of Fate's timeline. Getting supreme yin netherglow had already been an incredible stroke of luck. As for supreme yang solar illumination, he had no leads at all. Still, he wasn't in a rush. Things would work themselves out eventually. Technically, the simplest method of populating a world was to capture creatures from the primordial heartlands and transplant them into his own God world. But that wouldn't work. Each era had its own laws and rules. Creatures from a different era could not survive in this one. Even as the world's creator, Su Zimo could only force a handful of creatures into the new world by making the heavenly Tao look the other way. But a living world required far more than just dozens of beings. It needed millions. This was the rejection of world laws at work. Even the creator could not override it. Besides, every world's creatures were its foundation, its essence. Su Zimo would never use creatures from another era to anchor his true fate world. And most importantly, the era of the primordial heartlands had not ended. This heavenly Tao still operated. Typically, a new era only emerges after the old one collapses. If that heavenly Tao discovered the existence of another rival world with its own heavenly Tao, it would see it as a threat. And Su Zimo had no doubt he would be hunted by the entire world. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't ready yet. Once the true fate world had finished evolving, Su Zimo felt a tremendous surge of energy rushing back to him. This was the power of creation, unlike any other force. Creation was the ultimate expression of supremacy, the power to rule over everything. This energy flowed through Su Zimo, gradually reshaping his body. It began replacing his old powers with the new power of creation. His physical body, under this baptism, began resonating with Tao rhythms, slowly transforming into a Grand Tao physique. The Grand Tao physique was immaculate and pure, the strongest and most cultivation-friendly body in existence. Su Zimo, bathed in divine light, now housed three great forces in harmony: power of creation, hell-suppressing demon physique, and the Grand Tao physique. These three merged subtly yet retained their unique traits. Su Zimo was undergoing a profound, bone-deep transformation. As days passed, his aura grew more ethereal, detached from the mortal world. During this time, he didn't forget his weapon. Shadow Tyrant continued to absorb the power of creation, undergoing its own massive evolution. This process lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, Su Zimo opened his eyes. In that moment, the entire world seemed transformed. Chapter 222. How can my fate be decided by others? The power of creation is formless and colorless. When it radiated from Su Zimo's body, it felt as though all things in existence were trembling. As the hell-suppressing demon physique activated, his hair, unlike before, remained black, his skin a bronze hue. And yet, for reasons unknown, Su Zimo gave off a peculiar feeling. A feeling of purity. Whether it was his complexion, eyes, presence, even his voice, every aspect of his being felt utterly refined. If one had to describe it in a single word, it would be perfect. So pure and perfect that not a single flaw could be found. On the surface of his body, dark purple markings began to emerge, like blood vessels embedded in his skin. Normally, when not activating his battle physique, his creative energy remained invisible. But once the hell-suppressing demon physique awakened, a phantom figure appeared behind him, a man. At that moment, fragments of memory began flashing through Su Zimo's mind. Infernal Lord, surrender. We speak on behalf of the heavenly Tao to declare your crimes. Surrender is your only option, unless you want to die. Haha, you were invincible your whole life, and yet never expected to offend the heavenly Tao. Did you? Stop resisting. You were born here, and here you shall return. Your destiny cannot escape the river of fate. You cannot evade the suppression of the heavenly Tao. As these fractured memories surged through his thoughts, Su Zimo slowly turned to look over his shoulder. I'll wait for you. That phantom figure behind him seemed to speak, or maybe not. Moments later, the phantom vanished, and billowing demonic energy consumed the heavens. Su Zimo's creative energy turned black. In that instant, his 6th meridian gate, the next in the Imperial Meridian realm, was completely opened. Powered by the remnant energy from his past life and the impact of the 10 meridian fruit, the 6th gate shattered easily, like a flood bursting through a dam. The 6th meridian gate, Duskpine, Springwheel, Deepbone, Dawnwind, Vast Sea, Bloodvale, Duskpine. Every 3 meridian gates form a major cycle. Now, with 6 gates opened, he had completed 2 full cycles. Spirit force rushed through his body like a mighty river. An overwhelming aura erupted from within Su Zimo, and behind him, his true fate world fully materialized, a radiant blue planet. When his true fate appeared, the surrounding mists parted, revealing the planet spinning slowly in space. Every celestial rotation felt like it carried the power to destroy the heavens and shatter the earth. Each movement pulsed with an aura that could reshape fate itself. The planet was stunning, like a perfect water droplet, pure and flawless, like a polished gem, unearthed after millennia. At the same time, Su Zimo's cultivation rapidly surged, until he reached the pinnacle of the Imperial Meridian realm. When all was done, Su Zimo let out a deep breath. He could feel his body undergoing an earth-shaking transformation, his power so immense it was hard to contain. Even a casual movement radiated the threat of apocalyptic force. His creative energy coursed through him, continually strengthening his physique. At that moment, Su Zimo pondered a question. Why do people chase the heaven's will? Because it allows them to enter the path of Tao. The path of Tao is the most powerful cultivation system in this world. Each era produces only one grand emperor who can enter the path of Tao, which makes them invincible in their time. But Su Zimo realized he no longer needed to care about that. He had created his own era with his own hands. Su Zimo was now walking a path that no one had ever walked before. He didn't need the heaven's will to enter the path of Tao or path of immortality. He had chosen the path of creation. Looking around, Su Zimo noticed that the once towering mountain had completely collapsed. Cracks ran through the ground around him. He now stood in a field of ruin. With a wave of his hand, the power of creation burst forth. He summoned his true fate world, and from within the mists, the primordial chaos bead flew out once again. Holding it in his hand, Su Zimo's aura surged sky-high. He gently closed his eyes. Guided by the primordial chaos bead, he pierced time and space, arriving at the River of Fate. This was the river of the primordial Heartlands era, not the one belonging to his god world. All beings are slaves to fate, Su Zimo chuckled lightly. He waved his hand, infusing the primordial chaos bead with the power of creation. The primordial chaos bead shone with endless light. Time froze, space stopped. Even the River of Fate came to a halt. The pearl passed through the infinite river. How long had passed? Perhaps a moment, perhaps so long that time was forgotten. Suddenly, the River of Fate rippled. The primordial chaos bead emerged from the river, carrying a single drop of water. It was tiny, but it gave Su Zimo an intensely familiar feeling. He could not see its contents. No one can view their own destiny. But he knew this was his fate. His personal fate as recorded in the River of Fate. How can my fate be decided by anyone else? Su Zimo smiled faintly. He placed the drop of water in his palm and returned to his true fate world, the God world. Then, staring into the endless void, he dropped the water into his own River of Fate. This is my world. My fate should be mine to control. At the moment the water vanished, far away, at the edge of the infinite immortal mountain, a cloaked elder's expression changed drastically. He looked to the heavens in horror. The demon sovereign's fate has disappeared. And it wasn't just there. In multiple corners of the primordial heartlands, several figures, each cloaked in overwhelming power, looked toward the sky with solemn, grim faces. None of them knew what to do. With everything now resolved, Su Zimo left the realm. Outside, the Bailey Imperial clan's old ancestor had long since been subdued by Paimon. Paimon was a being who had already stepped into the path of Tao, and even passed beyond the fifth realm. Ordinary people could never hope to be his match. Chapter 223 World-Destroying Bao Va Thousand Calamity Arrows. When Su Zimo approached the old man, he saw a sky full of demonic energy swirling around him. The demonic energy had transformed into chains, binding the old man in midair. No matter how much he struggled, it was all in vain. As Su Zimo stepped forward, The old man glared at him furiously and shouted, "What exactly do you people want? Are you planning to go to war with the Bailey Imperial clan? So what if we are?"
Sujimo riplit.
The old man fell silent for a moment, then asked calmly, "Is this your decision, or the sacred grounds? Use your brain and think it through." Suzimo shook his head and said, "If the true martial sacred ground really wanted to destroy you, would we even bother attending your enthronement ceremony?" As soon as Suzimo finished speaking, a beam of radiant light suddenly shot down from the sky. An overwhelming shockwave rippled through the sky, followed by thunderous sonic booms. Seeing the descending light beam, Paimon's hands surged with demonic energy. He threw a punch straight at it. With a deafening boom, the demonic energy and radiant light exploded apart, and Paimon's massive body was actually forced back a step. Interesting. He looked up at the sky, his eyes flashing with bloodlust. From high above, space cracked open, and a young man stepped out, walking through the air. An immense aura radiated from him. He held a curved bow in his hand and carried a dozen long arrows on his back. Both the bow and arrows were surrounded by a gray mist, exuding a destructive power that could annihilate the heavens. When the youth released a single arrow, half the sky seemed to fracture, like the entire world might collapse beneath it. "The world-destroying bow and the 1,000 calamity arrows," Suzimo said in surprise as he saw the two artifacts in the young man's hands. It was known that these were once wielded by Grand Emperor Chong Kong. More importantly, most of the so-called Grand Emperor true treasures left behind by the imperial lineages were replicas made when Grand Emperors bore the Heaven's Will, modeled after their actual weapons. Very few Grand Emperors ever left behind their true weapons. After all, those weapons were like lifelong companions. They had followed them through life and death battles and formed deep bonds. Even the true martial sacred grounds martial god sword and the Heavenslayer blade were just imitations of the actual Grand Emperor true treasures. But the bow and arrows in the youth's hands, Suzimo was sure, were the real thing. Fifth step into the path of immortality. Paimon narrowed his eyes and chuckled as he observed the youth. This Bailey Imperial clan had someone like this? Suzimo said, clearly surprised. "Qinghe!" The old man trapped in midair cried out at the sight of the young man. The youth frowned slightly and fired 2 more arrows. The arrows pierced through the void and directly shattered the chains of black mist in midair. "Are you all right, ancestor?" Bailey Qinghe asked. "I'm fine. Be careful of that big brute," the old man replied, pointing at Paimon in warning. "Bailey Qinghe," Suzimo muttered as he heard the name, then said, "I think I know who you are." The true martial sacred ground had existed for 70,000 years. Despite the glory brought by 3 grand emperors, it still could not escape eventual decline. Until one day, a young girl suddenly rose to prominence and led the sect into a new era of greatness. She came to be known as Grand Empress Hongtian. During the age when she bore the Heaven's Will, countless prodigies emerged, and she was just an unremarkable disciple in the sect at the time. No one knew her name and no one recognized her talent. During that same era, a prodigy appeared in the heart of the Eastern continent. He traveled alone to the Middle Continent, challenging dozens of powerful imperial lineages. He single-handedly fought and defeated the holy sons of those sects, never losing a single match. Eventually, he returned to the Eastern continent to cultivate in seclusion, preparing to contend for the Heaven's Will. He was a top contender for Grand Emperor in his time, gifted, strong-willed, and driven. If not for that girl's rise, he might have truly become the Grand Emperor of that generation. But in the end, everything he had done merely served as the backdrop to her ascent. People witnessed her meteoric rise firsthand. After that battle, the name Bailey Qinghe vanished from the world. No one ever saw him again. He was not a Grand Emperor. He was not a war general. He was simply the Bailey Imperial clan's holy son of a bygone era, a contender who lost the fight for the Heaven's Will. Fifth step into the path of immortality. Suzimo frowned slightly as he observed Bailey Qinghe's cultivation. He hadn't heard of him in his previous life. Still, even Suzimo couldn't help but admire him a little. One defeat doesn't define a person. Some lose but never give up. To reach the fifth step of the path of immortality meant Qinghe stood at the peak of this world. One more step and he could unlock the 10th meridian gate. Reaching such a level wasn't just about talent. It demanded staggering effort and sacrifice. Right now, Bailey Qinghe looked solemnly at Paimon. He could sense that both of them were at the peak of the 9th meridian gate. But what shocked him was that Paimon wasn't immortal-bound. He was a Dao-bound cultivator. In any era, only a Grand Emperor could walk the path of Dao. Had this man obtained some secret technique that allowed him to do so? That thought sent chills down his spine. The old man and Bailey Qinghe both stared gravely at Paimon. Paimon stood wreathed in demonic energy, his overwhelming aura blanketing the entire Heaven Genesis microcosm. "We'll meet again," Su Zimo said with a smile, looking at the two. "Also, if you're smart, you won't breathe a word of this to anyone." As he finished speaking, Paimon moved his hands through the air, opening a spatial gate. The two of them stepped inside and vanished. As they left, the old man and Bailey Qinghe exchanged glances, seeing the same gravity in each other's eyes. "This Heaven Genesis microcosm is finished," the old man sighed helplessly. By now, the Heaven Genesis force had already begun to dissipate. The core of this energy was the black gold energy. Only with it could the world continuously produce Heaven Genesis force. Back then, the Grand Emperor Chongkong had set up Grand Emperor-level formations here to protect the black gold energy from being stolen. Sadly, this treasured land of the family was now ruined. "Should we report this to the true martial sacred ground?" Bailey Qinghe asked. "After all, he is their holy son." "The problem is, Su Zimo's father is the current ruler of the lineage. There's nothing we can do," the old man sighed, shaking his head. "I'll go visit the true martial sacred ground myself. Either way, they owe us an explanation." Bailey Qinghe frowned, and with that, his figure gradually faded into the air. Chapter 224. Once treading mountains va rivers in wind va snow. The space gate opened, and the two figures moved through the endless void. Before Su Zimo, everything was a blur of nothingness. He felt as though his body was suspended in a vacuum. As a cultivator at the Imperial Meridian Realm, he too possessed the ability to tear through space. But his power only allowed for short-range movement, it couldn't span long distances. "Master, where are we going now?" Paimon asked from the side. "To Maple Leaf City. Yao Shengnan and Little Gui are there," Su Zimo replied. Just as he finished speaking, a loud boom sounded. The space in front of them seemed ready to explode. A powerful force was condensing in the void above them. "Someone is interfering with our spatial transmission," Paimon frowned. "The enemy is hiding in the void. I can't locate them yet." As the force grew stronger, the surrounding space was forcibly compressed. Chaotic spatial currents spread in all directions. These currents were like sharp blades, forming a dense web that enveloped the void. "Master, we'd better get out of here first," Paimon suggested.
Su Zimo nốt đét.
With a wave of his hand, demonic energy surged across the air. All the spatial turbulence was wiped out. The space before them was torn open again, and the two stepped out. Su Zimo looked around with a slight frown. The ambush he expected didn't happen. The surroundings were eerily quiet. "They're gone," Paimon said. "There were at least 5 immortal path cultivators attacking just now. Ordinary imperial lineages don't have that kind of power," Su Zimo muttered, deep in thought. Of all the forces he had encountered, only 2 had the strength and reason to do something like this. Dark Primordial Race and the Divine Gate. The Dark Primordial Race didn't need much explanation. They were rulers of the Primordial Era. Though they had suffered a great upheaval, they still had deep reserves. As for the Divine Gate, they were even more mysterious. They controlled the forbidden ground of the Elden Lands, which was also a realm of immense treasures. After tens of thousands of years of development, their current strength was largely unknown to the outside world. Su Zimo scanned the surroundings. They were in a forest. Bare, desolate trees stood quietly over the frozen ground. Cold wind blew through, After a heavy snowfall, everything in sight was blanketed in white. In the distance, a wisp of smoke curled from a village nestled at the edge of the snowy expanse. Paimon hid in the void while Suzumo walked toward the village, hoping to figure out where they were. Hidden World Village, so read the black stone stele at the village entrance. Suzumo looked at the inscription with interest. Once treading mountains and rivers in wind and snow, life is but a dream. As he walked into the village, Suzumo was surprised by what he saw. The village wasn't large, just a few dozen houses, but the scene within was extraordinary. Above the rooftops floated a suspended river, crystal clear. Whenever a villager needed water, the river would release it as if it were sentient. Every household had spirit fruits and mystical herbs growing out front. Some of them were rare star-tier spiritual medicines. In the outside world, these would be incredibly valuable. But here, they grew like common weeds, everywhere and in abundance. Even the falling snow couldn't penetrate the village. Inside, it was perpetually spring. Flowers and trees flourished. Just then, a burly man carrying a hoe, apparently just back from the fields, walked up to Suzumo. "Who are you?" the man asked warily. "I got lost. I don't know where this is," Suzumo answered with a smile. He could feel the unusual nature of the village. This clearly wasn't a place for ordinary people. "Lost?" The man chuckled coldly. Spirit force surged from his body as he launched a palm strike at Suzumo. All 7 of his meridian gates burst open. He was an Empyrean Meridian Realm cultivator. Suzumo frowned and returned the strike with a punch. Boom! Both men staggered back several steps. Imperial Meridian Realm? The burly man looked up, surprised. There was a whole major realm between them, and yet they were evenly matched. Suzumo snorted, and the power of creation spread around him. He drew the Shadow Tyrant, and the roar of the Shadow Dragon echoed with the sound of the blade leaving its sheath. Tempered by the power of creation, the Shadow Tyrant had evolved once more. The dragon's roar and the blade's aura spread through the air. It was Suzumo's first real fight since stepping into the Imperial Meridian Realm. The man's fists glowed with green spirit force, transforming into the illusion of a green serpent. Cracks appeared in the space around them. Their clash triggered another deafening boom, and shockwaves blasted out in all directions. "Is that all you've got?" Suzumo raised his Shadow Tyrant and unleashed the 19 forms of Dao Seeking. The blade techniques were unpredictable, ferocious, and powerful, and they pushed the Empyrean Meridian man back. As the fight dragged on, the man looked increasingly disheveled. His hair in tangles, his robe torn in many places. But Suzumo knew that despite gaining the upper hand, he hadn't landed any truly fatal blows to that man. "All right, maybe we can talk now," the man said, catching his breath. "What's there to talk about?" Suzumo asked coldly, not stopping his attacks. "You just want to stay in Hidden World Village, don't you?" the man said.
No.
"You've got it wrong. I'm really just lost." In the sky, the Shadow Dragon's phantom appeared again. Thunder and flame swirled around it. As Suzumo slashed down, the dragon's eyes, once closed, suddenly opened. A vast dragon might filled the air. With a thunderous roar, the Shadow Dragon broke through layers of space, charging toward the burly man. Seeing this overwhelming power, several figures suddenly appeared not far from the battlefield. There were 4 of them. One tall, one short, a woman and an old man. Well damn, Snake Monarch's actually getting beaten by an Imperial Meridian cultivator. What a disgrace. The short one jeered gleefully. "You wouldn't do any better," the tall one replied calmly. "This little guy looks delicious," the woman said seductively, licking her lips. "Should we go help?" "No need. The Snake Monarch isn't that weak," the old man said, shaking his head as he watched the battle intently. "You think I'm afraid of you?" The burly man roared as the Shadow Dragon came crashing down, releasing waves of boundless spirit force. Chapter 225, Since this world has a sword immortal, why was there ever a need for me, Qingtian? At that moment, a massive green serpent appeared above the burly man's head. This was his true fate, a serpent over 100 meters long, its dark green scales gleaming brilliantly. As it opened its bloody maw, drops of cyan-colored venom dripped from its fangs. The serpent stretched its colossal body, nearly covering half the village. Its overwhelming beastly aura spread outward in every direction. Seeing this, the short man beside him quickly shouted, "Snake Monarch, be careful! Don't destroy the village!" The burly man turned his head slightly, and now his pupils had morphed into inverted triangles, eerily strange. As the shadow dragon charged at him, the giant serpent let out a screech, wrapping its massive body around the dragon. Boom! With a tight squeeze, everything was turned to dust. After crushing the shadow dragon, the serpent turned its head and locked its gloomy eyes on Su Zimo. Its massive form barely touched the ground, yet it caused countless cracks to form across the earth. "Boy, you'll pay for your disrespect," the burly man said coldly. His eyes now radiated an emotionless, reptilian coldness. Looking at the massive serpent, Su Zimo shook his head and muttered, "That green's enough to make someone dizzy." At that instant, the power of creation surged violently around him, and the space behind him collapsed under the force. White mist dispersed, revealing a blue planet slowly appearing behind him. As the planet emerged, the sound of the Grand Tao echoed, and its profound aura filled the sky. It was as though an entire world was evolving within that planet, carving the essence of both emptiness and splendor into existence. The spinning planet carried an unstoppable momentum as it hurtled toward the green serpent. Even before it landed, the serpent collapsed in terror, trembling on the ground, no longer daring to resist. The power of creation flooded the heavens, and the sound of the Grand Tao resonated like a beautiful melody in everyone's hearts. The planet descended only halfway, yet its might was enough to completely crush the serpent into oblivion. The burly man's face turned to shock. He felt his entire body bound by an invisible force, as if he was moments from being wiped out of existence. The four onlookers nearby, all previously enjoying the spectacle, suddenly changed expressions. The old man stepped forward, passing through layers of space in an attempt to rescue the burly man. But the moment he emerged, the overwhelming power also descended on him, binding him in place, unable to move an inch. How could this be?" the old man muttered, his face pale and full of dread. "Respected one, please spare us. We meant no harm," the other three quickly pleaded. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. With a wave of his hand, the blue planet disappeared, and its crushing pressure dissipated. The burly man beneath let out a long breath, his forehead soaked in sweat as if he'd just emerged from a downpour. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. That pressure had nearly suffocated him. Since reaching the Empyrean Meridian realm, he hadn't felt anything like that in years. And now, this pressure came from someone only at the Imperial Meridian realm. What on earth was that true fate? He muttered, swallowing hard in fear. As Su Zimo approached, both the old man and the burly man quickly stood up and bowed. "Thank you for showing mercy," they said respectfully. "Where is this place?" Su Zimo asked, eyes narrowing. "This is a small world hidden within the infinite void," the burly man quickly replied. A small world? Su Zimo was surprised. He'd assumed that after the spatial chaos and interrupted teleportation, he would have landed somewhere on the eastern continent. He didn't expect to stumble into a hidden small world tucked inside space itself. Only someone at the immortal or Tao realm could open such a space. After some explanation, Su Zimo also learned the identities of the 5 people. The burly man was called Snake Monarch, the short one was Dog Monarch, the tall one was Deer Monarch, the woman was Fox Monarch, and the old man was Tiger Monarch. "What are you 5 doing here?" Su Zimo asked. "We were all once rogue cultivators from the Middle Continent," Tiger Monarch explained. "We grew tired of constant conflict, and by chance discovered this hidden world. So we chose to retire here in seclusion." "You're still not telling the truth, are you?" Su Zimo said with a faint smile, grabbing the old man by the throat. "Am I being too soft?" Hearing this, Dog Monarch quickly forced a laugh and said, "Please don't be angry, respected one. We really had no intention to deceive you. It was desperation." "What kind of desperation?" Su Zimo asked, frowning. In the vast and dramatic history of the primordial heartlands, emperors have always been crowned with the greatest glory. The title of Grand Emperor carried the weight of unimaginable honor, of ending wars and heralding eras. But nothing in this world, or among its people, is ever absolute. There have always been those who defy fate, who fight the heavens and find joy in the struggle. This is the story of Grand Emperor Qing Tian. During the era when he bore the heaven's will, in an autumn soaked by torrential rain, when Qing Tian stood atop the firmament and declared, "In this world, I alone am invincible," it felt as though an age was coming to an end. It was near the end of this era that the sword immortal Jiang Yun was born. His destiny was bittersweet. With his mind and talent, he would have been the most suitable candidate to carry the heaven's will. But unfortunately, he was born too late. Before he even turned 50, the heaven's will had already chosen its bearer. Fate never gave him a chance. At that time, he was only in the Empyrean Meridian realm, not even qualified to contend for the heaven's will. The greatest victor of the era, naturally, was Grand Emperor Qing Tian. People pitied Jiang Yun. They thought he would seal himself away, waiting to fight for the heaven's will in the next era. But he shocked everyone. He became an immortal. He gave up the illustrious path of Tao and chose instead to walk the path of immortality. Must the path of immortality be weaker than the path of Tao? With his sword in hand, he stepped into the heavens to seek his answer. Grand Emperor Qing Tian carried the heaven's will for 700 years, eventually reaching the 5th step of Tao realm. To progress further, to open the 10th meridian gate, he would need to ascend to the upper realm. On the day of his ascension, Jiang Yun stood atop the heavens, waiting with his sword. What followed was a battle for the ages. For the first time in the history of the primordial heartlands, someone fought a grand emperor for 3 days and 3 nights, without losing, not even falling behind. The battle ended in a draw. Before ascending, even Grand Emperor Qing Tian sighed and said, "Since this world already has a sword immortal, why was there ever a need for me, Qing Tian?" From that day on, the name Sword Immortal resounded across the entire world, becoming legend throughout all 5 continents. Chapter 226, I want to see if the Sword Immortal lives up to his name. After his battle with Grand Emperor Qing Tian, the Sword Immortal soon ascended to the upper realm as well. His Tao heart and belief in martial cultivation was so unshakable. How could the primordial heartlands contain someone like him? However, before he left his inheritance in this particle world he had opened up, hoping that one day his descendants would arrive here to receive it. So this particle world was created by the Sword Immortal? Su Zimo asked. The 5 quickly nodded. Then what are you doing here? Trying to steal someone else's inheritance. Who wouldn't want the Sword Immortal's legacy? The short man, Dog Monarch, sighed and said, "We 5 were once well-regarded rogue cultivators in the Middle Continent." "Speak plainly," Su Zimo interrupted coldly. Dog Monarch let out an awkward laugh and corrected himself. "Fine, we were notorious rogue cultivators. Later, we accidentally discovered the entrance to this particle world and went through great pains to enter it. We thought we'd stumbled upon great fortune, but it turned out we got tricked by the Sword Immortal." "What do you mean?" Su Zimo asked, intrigued. "Though the Sword Immortal is no longer here, this world still contains a soul avatar of his," Dog Monarch explained. "It's as powerful as a peak god meridian cultivator. When we entered, we got completely thrashed by it. Then, the avatar told us to guard the entrance of Hidden World Village. Unless a descendant of the Sword Immortal's bloodline arrives, no one else is allowed to enter." "Interesting," Su Zimo chuckled quietly. "Well, since you're here, you may as well stay in Hidden World Village," the old man, Tiger Monarch, said with a smile. "This particle world is controlled by the Sword Immortal's soul avatar. Without his permission, no one can leave. You think I don't know what you're up to?"
Su Zimo sneered.
You just want me to go fight the Sword Immortal's avatar, so you can sneak out in the chaos. The five exchanged awkward glances and chuckled. Of course not, they said. But if you're willing to take the lead, we'd be happy to support you. Exactly, Snake Monarch added quickly. We're bored out of our minds stuck in this place. There's nothing here, and who knows when his descendant will show up. We can't just sit here and rot. That might be true, said Deer Monarch calmly. But the Sword Immortal Soul Avatar isn't like your average God Meridian cultivator. That's the Sword Immortal. His actual combat power definitely exceeds his realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to fight Grand Emperor Qing Tian to a standstill while only in the immortal realm. Do you know the difference between an elephant and an ant? Su Zimo asked. An elephant can crush an ant with one stomp, Dog Monarch replied tentatively. Correct, Su Zimo smiled as he walked deeper into the village. I can crush the elephant, and you are the ants. In the gentle breeze of April, the deeper one went into the village, the more lush and vibrant the vegetation became. When Su Zimo reached the end of the village, he found himself facing a valley. What greeted him was a sea of pink. Peach blossoms blanketed the mountainsides, blooming in every direction. A true sea of red. It looked like a paradise. A soft stream murmured nearby, and the scene felt like morning clouds had descended from the heavens themselves. Amid the swirling petals, a man in white robes, holding a long sword, sat beside the stream, repeatedly washing his blade. How many years has it been? Another living soul has arrived. The man turned his head to Su Zimo and said softly, Sword Immortal? Su Zimo asked. Just an empty title. The man shook his head. I prefer people call me Jiang Yun. Are you here for my inheritance? I was curious, so I came to take a look, Su Zimo replied. This particle world is hidden deep in the infinite void. I'm curious. How did any of you find it? Jiang Yun asked. There are always a few coincidences, Su Zimo smiled. How about we make a deal? Jiang Yun stood up and sheathed his sword, walking slowly toward Su Zimo. What kind of deal? Su Zimo asked with interest. I'll let you leave this place. In return, you deliver my inheritance to my clan, Jiang Yun said. If you wanted your descendants to inherit it, why not leave it with the clan instead of hiding it in a place like this? Su Zimo asked, puzzled. The easier something is to obtain, the less people value it. Jiang Yun shook his head. I did leave behind clues in the clan. Path that leads here. It's difficult but not deadly. If a true genius from my clan can make it through all the trials to get here, it proves their character is worthy of my legacy. But you didn't expect that so many years would pass and no one would come, Su Zimo said with a grin. Jiang Yun nodded and asked, Well, what do you say? I don't really need your help to leave this place, so your deal means nothing, Su Zimo replied calmly. This particle world is under my control, Jiang Yun said indifferently as he turned to leave. No one leaves without my permission. You may stay in Hidden World Village for now. When you've made up your mind, come find me. Peach blossoms danced in the air. Suddenly, a beastly roar shattered the peaceful scene. Chaos, Su Zimo's massive spirit beast, descended from the void. Cracks formed in the earth beneath its feet. The nearby stream surged. The peach petals spun and swirled even faster. Jiang Yun turned around, his eyes narrowing at the sight of chaos. The sword on his back trembled slightly, humming faintly. I want to see if the name Sword Immortal is truly deserved, Su Zimo said with a smile. That's a fine spirit beast, Jiang Yun replied calmly after a pause. Chaos let out a roar. Spirit force surged around it as it stepped back with its left foot, then lunged forward with its enormous frame. His fist slammed downward. Rumble. The sky trembled. Spirit force condensed overhead, and countless shockwaves rippled outward. It was a punch of tremendous momentum and power. Jiang Yun raised his head slightly and, without even drawing his sword, casually swept the air with the sheathed blade. A vast sword light split the air. This sword light was boundless and immeasurable, the sharpness of its aura echoing through the heavens, as if it could slice the sky itself. Space cracked endlessly as the sword light descended. Chaos's enormous body was sent flying. Boom! Dust flew everywhere as Chaos crashed to the ground, struggling to get back on its feet. Chapter 227 Void Spirit Monkey. At that moment, Jiang Yun narrowed his eyes and flung his sword, scabbard and all, into the sky. The scabbard radiated an endless sword light, thundering through the heavens with deafening booms. As the scabbard slowly descended, behind it appeared the phantom of a massive long sword. This sword stretched across the entire sky. Its hilt and tip extended to the horizon, as if it had reached the very limits of this world. The heavens above were filled with its sharp sword aura, and even though the blade wasn't drawn, its power was overwhelming. As Chaos tried to rise to its feet, it was continuously suppressed by the sword's aura and pressure. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't escape. At this moment, Su Zimo and Jiang Yun stood facing each other in the valley. In the center between them, Chaos roared and struggled beneath the weight of the sword. The sky churned with clouds and wind, spirit force condensed into mist, and the phantom sword floated midair, pressing down on Chaos. "You really are someone who once fought a grand emperor to a draw," Su Zimo muttered. This Jiang Yun was only a soul avatar, no stronger than a god meridian cultivator. And in the same realm, beasts usually dominated humans. Yet Jiang Yun hadn't even unsheathed his sword and was already able to suppress Chaos with ease. "Do you still want to keep fighting?" Jiang Yun asked casually. "If your true self were here, maybe the outcome would be different," Su Zimo smiled. "But a mere avatar? That's far from enough." As he spoke, boundless demonic energy surged into the sky. A mass of black mist condensed above, carrying a terrifying aura as it attacked the phantom sword floating in the air. Boom! The sword aura and demonic energy collided in midair, and cracks began to form in the phantom sword. The suppressive power over Chaos weakened, and Chaos immediately broke free, roaring angrily at Jiang Yun. Jiang Yun withdrew the sword and strapped the scabbard to his back again. He didn't respond to Chaos but instead gazed solemnly at the demonic energy above. "Not yet an emperor. Yet someone like this exists in the lower world?" Jiang Yun murmured. "Do you still want to fight? That's the question you should be asking yourself," Su Zimo said. "What's your connection to the primordial demon cave?" Jiang Yun asked after some thought. "You know about the primordial demon cave?" Su Zimo raised an eyebrow and replied indifferently. "I've only seen such pure demonic energy in the primordial demon cave," Jiang Yun explained. Although he was just a soul avatar, his true self was in the upper realm, and their experiences and memories were linked. "What you've created isn't a simple soul split," Su Zimo observed. "You've formed a semi-independent consciousness." "I'm far from creating a true independent being." Jiang Yun shook his head. "I don't have the ability to create life. So, are you from the primordial demon cave?" "Knowing too much isn't good for you," Su Zimo replied coldly. In truth, he still didn't fully understand what the primordial demon cave was and had no desire to reveal more than necessary. "You should know there's a spatial gate in the middle continent that connects to the primordial demon cave," Jiang Yun said. "Outside of that, unless you ascend to the upper realm, there's no other way to reach it." "What are you trying to say?" Su Zimo asked calmly. He already knew about the gate. Paimon had mentioned it. "That gate has been sealed," Jiang Yun replied. "There's an ancient edict passed down since the legendary era. I don't know who issued it, but throughout the imperial era, every Grand Emperor, before ascending, would add a seal to that gate. From Grand Emperor Zhen Wu to the Mortal Emperor, this continued for hundreds of thousands of years without interruption." Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. He realized things were far more serious than he had thought. Paimon had only told him a little, that once he inherited the Infernal Lord's legacy, he would understand. But now, it seemed the primordial demon cave had been targeted since the very beginning. Since the legendary era, it wasn't just personal enemies the Infernal Lord had faced. Even without mentioning older times, the mere fact that every Grand Emperor in the Imperial era had sealed the gate was hard to comprehend. "Why did they seal it?" Su Zimo asked, frowning. I don't know, Zhang Yun replied. Maybe you should ask Grand Emperor Jinwu or go back to the Desolate Era or even further back to the Legendary Era itself if you want an answer. What's your point? Su Zimo asked. Why don't we strike another deal? Zhang Yun smiled. There exists a legendary spirit beast called the Void Spirit Monkey, Zhang Yun said. It can bypass all seals and travel freely through the infinite void. If you can find one, you could break the seal on the spatial gate and enter the primordial demon cave. Su Zimo glanced at Chaos. He'd never heard of such a creature. That's a beast from the legendary era. It was believed to have gone extinct in the desolate era. Chaos replied quickly. As a primordial god beast itself, Chaos knew more about the demon and beast race than most. No, not completely extinct, Zhang Yun corrected. A few still survive, though barely. My avatar may not be strong enough to fight you, but even if you destroy this particle world, you won't gain anything from it. Wouldn't it be better to make a deal instead? It's a win-win for both of us. Why should I trust you? Su Zimo asked. My clan still exists on this continent. If I deceived you, you could take revenge on them, Zhang Yun replied. That would be a huge loss for me. There's no point in lying. It's been ages. I don't even know how my family is doing now. I just hope you'll take my inheritance back to them. And if they're ever in trouble, I hope you can help them within reason. In return, I'll tell you where to find the Void Spirit Monkey. And if you're interested, I can tell you a few things about the upper realm as well. It's been so long. What if your clan's already wiped out? Su Zimo asked with a smile. No. Zhang Yun shook his head. I left behind a final safeguard. Since it hasn't been triggered, the clan must still be holding on. All right, deal, Su Zimo nodded. He truly wanted to learn everything about the primordial demon cave, including his connection to the Infernal Lord. It was probably the only unresolved knot in his heart. Zhang Yun nodded. Spirit force surged around him, and in the palm of his hand, a delicate little sword appeared, spinning slowly. The sword was translucent, yet it contained a sword capable of destroying worlds. Even just glancing at it, one could feel its terrifying sharpness. Chapter 228, Arrival of the Undying Race. I hope you'll keep your promise, Zhang Yun said. I've left a trace of my consciousness within it. When you deliver the inheritance, I'll tell you everything. Sword aura radiated from his body. The small sword floated midair and slowly drifted toward Su Zimo. Su Zimo took the sword and stored it in his spatial ring. Then he asked, How much do you know about the primordial demon cave? That's a forbidden ground in the upper realm, Zhang Yun replied. Forget understanding it, just speaking about it openly is prohibited. I only passed by it once and picked up a few things. They say it houses the most powerful demons ever known, beings capable of destroying entire worlds. What if I'm one of those demons? Su Zimo asked with a grin. Would you turn against me? To be honest, I don't have strong feelings about demons, Zhang Yun said, shaking his head. Just like humans have good and bad among them, so do demons. You can't judge an entire race by a few individuals. You're an interesting one, Su Zimo smiled. The primordial heartlands are still far too small. Zhang Yun looked at Su Zimo seriously. Come to the upper realm soon. That's where the real vastness lies. That's where true powerhouses belong. What about those 5 in the village? Su Zimo asked, glancing behind him. That's up to you, Zhang Yun shrugged. Kill them or let them go. Your call. As the two conversed, a deafening boom rang out from the sky. With the explosion, the entire particle world began to tremble. Su Zimo looked up. In the sky, countless tiny red dots had appeared. As they grew larger, he quickly realized each red dot was a person. But these people had red skin and eyes that were pitch black, completely devoid of whites. Aside from that, they looked fairly human. Su Zimo had seen these creatures once before during a glimpse into the River of Fate. The Undying Race, he said in surprise. They were once one of the dominant races of the Desolate Era, known along with the Beast Race and Titan Race as the 3 Great Races. These 3 once defeated the Dark Primordials and nearly ruled the entire Desolate Age. The Titan race was severely weakened in that war and eventually retreated from history. The Beast race was overthrown by Grand Emperor Jinwu. As for the Undying race, they vanished completely, leaving no trace. You really do know quite a bit, Zhang Yun said with a chuckle. What are they doing here? Su Zimo asked. By now, the sky was almost fully occupied by the Undying race army. At the center of the formation hovered a cannon-like cylinder. Though there were many Undying cultivators, their individual cultivation levels weren't very high. However, they seemed to possess a unique method, allowing them to combine their power and channel it into the central device. The force generated by this combined effort was terrifying. Each time the cannon fired, the entire particle world shook violently. Cracks spread across the ground. At this rate, destruction seemed inevitable. Can your world hold out? Su Zimo asked. They won't destroy it. Zhang Yun shook his head. This is the third time they've come here. I just don't know how much longer I can hold out. So that's why you're in such a rush to get your inheritance out? Su Zimo asked. If you hadn't shown up, I'd have had to give it to those 5. Zhang Yun nodded. But I never really trusted them. And you trust me? We just met. Su Zimo smiled, amused. Just a gut feeling, Zhang Yun replied. Besides, I can tell my inheritance doesn't mean that much to you. But to them, it's everything. Su Zimo laughed and asked again. So what does the Undying race want here? They want to seize this particle world and use it as a base, Zhang Yun replied. Certain people once made a pact. The Undying race is forbidden from appearing on the primordial heartlands, so they can only seek out these particle worlds hidden in the infinite void. Seeing Su Zimo's puzzled expression, Zhang Yun added with a smile, You'll understand when you get to the upper realm. The Undying race can't make much of a mark on the world anymore. As they spoke, cracks began to spread across the sky. It was as if the entire firmament was about to collapse. It's time for you to go. Zhang Yun looked at Su Zimo and said, You're not coming? Su Zimo asked. This is my world. Where would I go? Zhang Yun smiled faintly, his gaze lifting to the sky. These insects are only bold because I'm just an avatar. If my true self were here, they wouldn't dare act like this. Su Zimo nodded, then stepped forward into the void and appeared before the 5 in Hidden World Village. Respected one, what happened? The 5 asked quickly as soon as they saw him. I'll give you a choice, Su Zimo smiled. You can either stay here and die with this world, or I can let you go, but you'll owe me a favor. The 5 exchanged looks, then all nodded and said, We'll do as you ask. As the sky above shattered completely, the Undying race's army descended like a swarm. They immediately took control of the particle world. In the valley where peach blossoms still bloomed, Zhang Yun stood atop a peak, his white robes fluttering in the wind. Calmly, he faced the tens of thousands of soldiers surrounding him. Sword Immortal Zhang Yun, still as elegant as ever, a loud voice called out. The Undying forces parted, and a man in a blood-black robe stepped forward. 5th step into the immortal path. Zhang Yun's gaze darkened. You really sent someone impressive. How could we dare underestimate the Sword Immortal, the man who once fought a grand emperor and uttered the words, In all the world, the sword path is but mediocre, the robed man replied with a grin. My battle with Qing Tian was just a friendly exchange. Later generations exaggerated it, Zhang Yun said calmly. But taking my world, aren't you afraid of my revenge? What happens in the upper realm is the concern of those above. We just follow orders, the man replied confidently. Zhang Yun's gaze sharpened. He slowly bowed his head and drew his sword. The moment it was unsheathed, countless streams of sword aura echoed across the void. Chapter 229 Sword God Descends. Endless sword aura surged through the sky as Zhang Yun slowly drew his sword from its scabbard. With a metallic clang, a storm of sword shadows swept across half the sky. The surrounding space groaned and cracked, unable to withstand the immense force. Zhang Yun's sword wasn't particularly long, just over 2 feet. The blade was a pale blue, while the hilt was pitch black, exquisitely crafted. As he swung the sword slowly, the infinite sword energy surged like tidal waves crashing down with unstoppable momentum. Boom! Nearly 100 members of the Undying race were instantly annihilated by the sword aura. The sky remained filled with swirling sword aura, blanketing the entire heavens and earth. Seeing this display of power, the other Undying soldiers instinctively retreated several steps, staring up at Zhang Yun's figure in awe. He walked through the air, white robes fluttering, sword aura blazing from his body. Among the Undying soldiers, those carrying swords found their blades trembling uncontrollably, resonating with Zhang Yun's presence. It was as if every sword in the world was answering his call, ready to drown everything in a sea of blades. Countless long swords flew into the air, their unsheathing clangs harmonizing with the hum of sword songs. Sword aura fused with the flying swords, forming a colossal blade of endless might. At this moment, Zhang Yun's avatar seemed like a sword immortal incarnate, commanding every sword under heaven. When he slashed again, hundreds more Undying perished. Cracks split the earth beneath them, turning the ground into gaping chasms. The blood-robed man leading the Undying forces furrowed his brow. Blood-colored energy surged from his body as he flew toward Zhang Yun. Behind him, the shadow of a giant skull slowly formed, his true fate. Its hollow eye sockets burned with 2 clusters of eerie green flames, and waves of blood aura swirled around it. As the blood-robed man threw a punch, the skull shadow mirrored the motion. Boom! The sword aura shattered midair, and Zhang Yun was forced back several steps. After all, he was only at the peak of the God Meridian realm, while the other man had already reached the 5th step of the immortal path. The gap was immense. Give up this particle world, and I'll spare your avatar, the blood-robed man said calmly. You're afraid, Zhang Yun replied with a faint smile, raising his head slightly. The man hesitated, then said flatly, Do you think you alone can stand against our entire race? He wasn't necessarily afraid, but he clearly didn't want to make Zhang Yun a true enemy. The sword immortal was no ordinary figure. If even an avatar could do this, what kind of power did his true form hold in the upper realm? Well then, I guess I'll just have to disappoint you, Zhang Yun smiled faintly. At that moment he stood tall and slowly closed his eyes. Boundless spirit force gathered around him. His veins bulged beneath his skin, pulsing violently. Strange blood markings appeared all over his body. His eyes turned blood red, and his aura skyrocketed, nearly 100-fold. Spirit force around him began to ignite. His once colorless sword aura now turned blood red. Fragments of shattered sword intent condensed again, and a vicious sword howl echoed across the land. The entire sky was dyed red by the raging sword aura. Zhang Yun slowly opened his eyes, now burning with terrifying intensity. Forbidden art, blood prison heaven scorch. He now resembled a lone boat tossed in a boundless sea. Around him, waves and gales raged, towering into apocalyptic force. His body looked like it could be crushed at any moment by his own power. So, you've decided to sacrifice your avatar, the blood-robed man said with a frown. Burning your entire life essence to boost your strength dozens of times over. Whatever happens, that body of yours is finished. Zhang Yun simply scoffed in response and raised his sword. A blood-red beam of light shot up into the sky, illuminating half the heavens. Power condensed on the sword, tearing apart the surrounding space. The entire dimension seemed on the verge of collapse. Echoes of the Grand Tao rang out from the air. Behind Zhang Yun, the phantom of a giant sword began to form. With every motion it made, the whole particle world quaked. Sword God descends, Zhang Yun whispered. He gripped his sword with both hands and raised it high above his head. The massive phantom sword behind him mirrored his movements, shaking with power as blood-colored sword aura surged across the sky. The distant heavens echo with the song of swords. What a beautiful melody of war, Zhang Yun said with a soft smile. With a thunderous roar, he brought his sword down, along with the phantom blade behind him. And at that moment all of his energy, his essence, spirit force, and soul were consumed. His avatar was obliterated, but the sword strike itself could no longer be stopped. Seeing this, the blood-robed man's face darkened. The situation had spiraled far beyond his expectations. He had thought it would be an easy conquest. Who would have guessed just an avatar would cause him so much trouble? He rose into the air, his body wrapped in blood-red spirit force. The skeletal shadow behind him howled. Bone-white and grim, it surged with power. Waves of blood-colored energy enveloped the massive sword and met it head-on with a mighty punch. The shockwaves engulfed the entire space. Many of the undying soldiers were blown away. A small mushroom cloud bloomed in the sky. When the dust finally settled and everyone looked up again, the colossal sword that once blocked out the sun had vanished. Only faint scars of sword aura remained across the land. Everything was quiet. The blood-robed man floated in midair, his robes torn to shreds. After a long silence, the skull shadow behind him, whose eyes had dimmed, suddenly reignited with ghostly green flames. The man let out a long breath. If it weren't for the undying race's bloodline, I might have really died here today. He descended from the air and surveyed the devastated land below. The valley had been flattened into rubble. He frowned and asked, "What's the status of this particle world?" "Some people seem to have escaped just now," one subordinate reported. "No matter. Secure the area. Inform the higher-ups." The blood-robed man replied calmly. As he finished speaking, cracks suddenly spread across the earth below. The entire world began to tremble. Even the sky exploded with blinding light. "General, I think this particle world is about to collapse," another undying soldier shouted in panic. Chapter 230 Elden Lands. A deafening explosion echoed through the void, collapsing half of it into darkness. Rumble. The sky roared, and all members of the undying race hovered above the wreckage. The particle world had been reduced to ruins. As it collapsed, everything disintegrated into dust within the void. Everyone had just witnessed the complete destruction of an entire world, and could only sigh in the end. They had gained nothing, and instead suffered heavy losses. "General, what do we do now?" someone asked. The blood-robed man snorted coldly. "Report the situation to the higher-ups and start scouting for a new particle world." Su Zimo tore through layers of space until he finally emerged back into the outer world. Paimon did not appear beside him. He had chosen to remain hidden in the void. Looking around the empty surroundings, Su Zimo smiled and said, "Since you've all come, why keep hiding?" As his words fell, spatial ripples stirred in the air, and 6 figures emerged in midair. 5 of them radiated with a powerful immortal light that coalesced into a heavy pressure bearing down on Su Zimo. "Master Een, long time no see." Su Zimo smiled at one of the elders. That elder was none other than Een Wuhin, the God Lord of the Divine Gate. "Master Su, we've been waiting for you," Een Wuhin replied with a light smile. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. He glanced around. All 5 of the other elders were immortal path cultivators. Judging from what had happened earlier, when he and Paimon had been ambushed in the infinite void, these must have been the ones who intercepted their teleportation. "Someone wants to see you," Een Wuhin said with a smile. "For you to personally bring 5 immortal path cultivators. This must be the full might of Divine Gate," Su Zimo said casually. "Whoever wants to see me must be quite extraordinary. Should I try to guess who?" "No need to guess. You'll know when you get there," Een Wuhin replied, shaking his head. "Very well. I'm curious to meet this person," Su Zimo said with a nod. The origin of the Elden Lands date back to the legendary era. Of course, most of what's known comes from fragmented records and scattered legends. It's said that in the early legendary era, living beings were weak. The epic had only just begun, and cultivation was in its infancy. Creatures struggled just to survive. Back then, the world was full of primal monsters, beings of immense power and brutality. Ordinary life forms stood no chance against them. To escape extinction, living beings began grouping together. Around their homes, they built traps and formations to repel the beasts. As they grew stronger, the traps and formations became more complex and deadly. Eventually, the places where they dwelled transformed into treacherous lands. Over the eras, many such dangerous zones were destroyed or lost to history. But one remained, the Elden Lands. After countless years of erosion and change, it still endured and eventually became one of the 10 forbidden grounds of the primordial heartlands. Su Zimo traveled east with Yin Wuhan and the 5 other elders. Among them, Su Zimo was in the Imperial Meridian realm, Yin Wuhan was Empyrean Meridian, and the others were Immortal Path cultivators. They traveled without rest. After 10 full days at maximum speed, they finally arrived at the Elden Lands. During the journey, the 5 Immortal Path elders subtly surrounded Su Zimo to prevent any chance of escape. As Su Zimo looked at the ancient, time-worn land before him, he reflected. This place had created countless legends, and buried just as many. Mountain ranges stretched across the horizon, obstructing all view. The land was barren and desolate, without a single plant. Flocks of crows flew overhead, some carrying decayed corpses in their beaks. Their screeches echoed in the vast emptiness. "Please, Master Su." Yin Wuhan gestured politely. He took the lead, with Su Zimo surrounded, and they moved forward together. They passed through the mountain range, long abandoned and lifeless. The entrance to the Elden Lands was shrouded in fog, blocked by a mysterious barrier. With a wave of Yin Wuhan's hand, a door-sized opening melted into the barrier. The group entered in sequence. Inside the Elden Lands, the biggest difference was that it was eternally night. No light could penetrate this place. Other than flame, all sunlight was devoured the moment it touched the Elden Lands. The sky was pitch black. Pure, unbroken darkness, no stars, no moon. "Has Master Su ever been here before?" Yin Wuhan asked with a smile. The 5 Immortal Path elders vanished silently behind them. "I've been here, and I haven't," Su Zimo answered calmly. In this life, he had never stepped into the Elden Lands. But in his past life, after the secrets of this place were exposed, he had tagged along with a massive army of cultivators trying to scavenge treasure. Moreover, in the evolution of the River of Fate, he had seen the Elden Lands' origin, and the cruelty of the legendary era. "Then please stay close, Master Su," Yin Wuhan said. "The Elden Lands are vast and largely unexplored, even by us." Su Zimo nodded. Just then, a creature came charging from the distance and stopped beside him. It was massive, with 2 red horns on its head. Its eyes were the size of a human fist. While it had sparse hair on its head, the rest of its body was covered in thick fur. Looking closely, Su Zimo recognized it as a Yaksha. The Yaksha was dragging a carriage behind it. "Master Su, you must be tired. Why not rest in the carriage?" Yin Wuhan said kindly. Su Zimo nodded and stepped inside. He knew that flight was forbidden in the Elden Lands. Some mysterious force governed everything here. Even the Divine Gate couldn't fly here. More importantly, the Divine Gate had mapped a single safe path through the Elden Lands, paid for with the lives of their disciples. This path was absolutely safe. And this was also why Yin Wuhan had chosen to use a carriage, so Su Zimo wouldn't learn the path. As Su Zimo settled into the carriage, it began to move slowly. The Yaksha's strength was immense, and the carriage remained steady and fast. "Master, what's the plan?" Paimon's voice sounded from the void. "Let's go meet this god emperor of theirs." Su Zimo smiled. After all, they went to a lot of trouble. Bringing 5 Immortal Path cultivators just to see me? They must think very highly of me. Chapter 231, Meeting the God Emperor. "How do you know it's definitely the God Emperor?" Paimon asked curiously. To be honest, he didn't think much of the so-called Grand Emperors of this world. After all, his true strength had already broken through all 10 Meridian gates, a feat the rules of the primordial heartlands simply limited from expressing. If someone can command 5 Immortal Path cultivators, I can't think of anyone in the Divine Gate other than the God Emperor. Su Zimo replied with a smile. "I just don't understand why he's gone to such lengths to find me. If it's only about the Heaven Devourer blade, it's not worth all this effort." Su Zimo fell into thought. After the three grand emperors of the past joined forces to slay the God Emperor, the latter had gone into hiding, aiming to once again carry the heaven's will. His whereabouts had remained a secret ever since. Even when most of the Divine Gate was overrun by the allied martial armies, he still hadn't surfaced. The carriage rode for a long time, its windows and exterior sealed, making it impossible to see outside. But Paimon had already memorized the path. Finally, after quite a while, the carriage curtain was pulled open. Ahead was a resplendent palace. Pearls, jade, gemstones, precious materials of all kinds were embedded along the palace walls. The entire structure was built from rare red gold crystal. Lining the path toward the palace were rows of rare spirit herbs and mystic plants. Definitely the God Emperor's taste. Su Zimo chuckled. Master Su, I won't go in with you, Yin Wuhan said with a smile. Just walk straight ahead. Su Zimo gazed at the palace and stepped forward. He passed through a shaded path flanked by spirit trees and exotic herbs before entering the grand hall. Before him stretched a deep corridor, with murals engraved on either wall. A quick glance revealed they depicted the life of the God Emperor, from his early struggles to the moment he shouldered the heaven's will. After crossing the long hallway, Su Zimo entered the main throne room. At the center stood an imperial throne crafted from an even rarer red gold god crystal. But the true focal point wasn't the throne, it was the man sitting on it. Initially facing away, the throne slowly rotated as Su Zimo entered. The man turned to face him. At that moment, no matter how luxurious the palace was, no matter how rare the materials used, they paled in comparison to the presence of the man on the throne. Just by sitting there, he became the center of all existence. Su Zimo looked up. The man wore a purple robe, his hair long and loosely tied atop his head. His aura was vast, but unlike those who intentionally radiated pressure, his was innate. It was the presence of someone who had stood at the true peak, an aura born from having once looked down from the summit. In his eyes, it seemed like entire worlds and constellations flowed. Though he appeared at ease, his presence was as immovable as a towering mountain. He shouldered the heavens and tread upon the abyss, truly unshakable. The two stared at each other for a long time before the man finally spoke. Your performance surprised me, he said. God Emperor? Su Zimo asked. You already guessed it, the man smiled. What do you want from me? Su Zimo asked flatly. Before we talk, the God Emperor said with a faint smile. Shouldn't the one hiding in the shadows come out too? As he spoke, Paimon's massive figure emerged from the void. He glanced at the God Emperor, a faint look of disdain in his eyes. Truly at the apex, the God Emperor muttered after studying Paimon. Even some grand emperors wouldn't be your match. Even a grand emperor doesn't mean much, Paimon replied coolly. What's a 9-meridian grand emperor to me? Paimon carried his own pride. He was an ascended being, not reliant on the heaven's will, yet no different from those who bore it. More importantly, he had already unlocked all 10 meridian gates, something not even many grand emperors in the upper realm had achieved. Perhaps those grand emperors who had matured in the upper realm could rival him at full power. But as for these grand emperors who hadn't even ascended, they were just kings in a shallow pond. No wonder you're confident enough to waltz into the divine gate. The God Emperor smiled without offense. Someone like you, choosing to help someone else instead of heading to the upper realm, that's truly unexpected. I am a heaven demon, Paimon replied calmly. The God Emperor was momentarily stunned. He stared deeply at Paimon, then chuckled. Interesting. Very interesting. A so-called heaven abandoned, like me encountering the heaven demon of this era. Must be fate. What heaven demon? Su Zimo frowned and looked at Paimon. He had discussed Paimon's identity before. Paimon had explained that he was unlike the other demons or generals from the primordial demon cave. Before the Infernal Lord's full inheritance was passed down, no demon, whether friend or foe, was allowed to interfere with the Infernal Lord's fate. But Paimon was different. Even if the Infernal Lord never revived, he would still be born in this era. because he had his own mission. What is your mission? Su Zimo asked, frowning. There's no use asking, the God Emperor interjected with a smile. Aside from the Grand Emperor of each era, the Demon Slayer, and the Heaven Demon himself, no one is allowed to know until the time is right. Why?
Su Yimo Prex?
Because of the laws of the heavenly Tao, Paimon quickly answered. So it's like my own existence, Su Zimo muttered. Are we all just toys of fate? No. Paimon shook his head. The heavenly Tao has no will. It's not good or evil, it's like a machine. Cold. Mechanical. It simply enforces its own rules. When the time comes, you'll understand everything. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Inwardly, he scoffed coldly. Screw the rules. This life, I'll step outside the river of fate, create a new era, a new epoch, where the rules are mine. The Demon Slayer of this generation will have his hands full. The God Emperor chuckled. What do you want with me? Su Zimo asked coldly. I originally intended to negotiate, the God Emperor said. But now that I've seen the Heaven Demon with my own eyes, I think we can speak as equals. You don't seem qualified to speak to me as an equal, Su Zimo replied. Do you still think you're the Grand Emperor of old? Then let's say I'll lower myself a little. The God Emperor smiled, unconcerned. As long as you're willing to help me, I'll grant you anything you ask. Chapter 232, Myriad Tao Lotus. I'm not helping, Su Zimo replied flatly. The God Emperor was momentarily stunned, then said, You're not even going to ask what it's about? What else could it be besides the heaven's will?
Su Yimo counter.
What else would make you come out of hiding and risk exposing yourself? You even know that? The God Emperor studied Su Zimo carefully, his gaze sharpening. Seems you're even more capable than I thought. I have a question for you, Su Zimo said. Go ahead. The God Emperor nodded. Why does every generation's Grand Emperor seal the spatial gate to the primordial demon cave? You seem very interested in matters concerning the demons. The God Emperor frowned slightly, then answered. That place is home to a race of bloodthirsty, cruel, inhuman monsters. If the spatial gate is breached and those creatures descend upon the primordial heartlands, it would be mass slaughter, rivers of blood. How do you know they're inhuman? Have you ever seen them with your own eyes? Paimon asked coldly. That was the decree of the sage, the God Emperor replied. That spatial gate wasn't just sealed in the era of Grand Emperors. From the legendary era onward, beings of great power in every era have added seals to it. Whether those demons are truly cruel or not, precaution is always wise. If the worst happens, who would bear the consequences? And who is this sage? Su Zimo asked, frowning. Legend says that in the distant legendary era, when all beings had just started cultivating and were still very weak, they were preyed upon by powerful, naturally born monsters. Then, one day, a child dressed in Taoist robes riding a green ox appeared. He walked across the primordial heartlands, slaying those monsters wherever he went. He gave the weak a sliver of hope to survive. The God Emperor explained. Once the world grew stronger, the boy disappeared. People called him the sage in his honor. After the explanation, the God Emperor smiled. Now, can we talk about my matter? This era's heaven's will is mine, Su Zimo said bluntly. I know you want it too. That makes us enemies, doesn't it? No. The God Emperor quickly shook his head. I have no interest in this era's heaven's will. We could be partners. Hearing that, Su Zimo paused, a bit surprised. Didn't your heavens will shatter in that battle? You said it yourself, it shattered, but it didn't disappear, the God Emperor replied. Anything broken can be reforged. What do you want my help with? Su Zimo asked. I've researched countless ancient texts and secret histories and learned of one thing that could help reforge my heaven's will. For centuries I've searched the primordial heartlands in secret, but found nothing, the God Emperor sighed. What thing? Su Zimo asked. There's a legendary item called the Myriad Tao Lotus, the God Emperor said slowly and deliberately.
Su Yimo Frore.
He knew exactly what that was. The myriad Tao lotus had 8 petals, each with its own color: white, black, red, yellow, green, blue, purple, and gray. Each petal had incredible, unique powers. It was said that Grand Empress Hongtian was the only person in history to gather all 8 petals. Before ascending, she left the green lotus in the sword-cleansing pool of the true martial sacred ground to help cultivators attune to their weapons. The white lotus was left in the inheritance of Bailey Shao. As for the remaining petals, their whereabouts were still unknown. The myriad Tao lotus can help you reforge your heaven's will? Su Zimo asked curiously. To be precise, it's the red lotus I need, the God Emperor explained quickly. It has the power to condense Tao resonance. If I have it as the core, I can rebuild my heaven's will. Well, I'm sorry to say this, Su Zimo said, shaking his head, but we don't have the red lotus in the true martial sacred ground. No, go back and dig through your sect's ancient records, the God Emperor insisted. Many things are written in those ancestral archives. You'll definitely find something about the lotus. Su Zimo looked at him, then chuckled. If you want info on the red lotus so badly, why not go straight to my father at the true martial sacred ground instead of asking me? That's different. If you help me, then I owe you a favor. But if I go straight to your sect, it has nothing to do with you, the God Emperor said with a smile. You understand, right? Oh, I understand, Su Zimo said. What I see is that you're afraid to go to the true martial sacred ground. The God Emperor fell silent for a moment, then finally said, one of the 3 emperors who ambushed me back then was Grand Emperor Bing Shui. She was the ancestor of the Qi imperial clan, the one who elevated them to the status of an imperial lineage. Su Zimo nodded slightly. That explained a lot. There was a story between Grand Emperor Bing Shui and the true martial sacred ground. Not with the Qi imperial clan, just her personally. If the God Emperor reformed his heaven's will and ascended, it was certain he'd go seek revenge. Naturally, the true martial sacred ground would stand by Grand Emperor Bing Shui. Give me one good reason to help you, Su Zimo said with a smirk. The God Emperor immediately answered, I'll be your protector when you bear the heaven's will. No need. Su Zimo shook his head. The God Emperor glanced at Paimon, then said, he can't be your protector. He has his own mission. As the holy son of the true martial sacred ground, do you think I lack protectors? Su Zimo replied with a laugh. The God Emperor was caught off guard. He hadn't considered that Su Zimo was backed by a top-tier imperial lineage. There are many treasures within the Elden lands, friend. Anything you like, you can take, the God Emperor offered. Perhaps name your terms. We can negotiate? What I want you can't give, Su Zimo smiled, shaking his head. But I'm not unreasonable. If you're willing to serve under me, then I'll help you search for the red lotus. You want a Grand Emperor to serve you? The God Emperor wasn't angry, he just raised an eyebrow. Some people sit high on their pedestals for so long, they forget what it's like to fall, Su Zimo said calmly. But once they fall, you'll see, they're just like everyone else. Grand Emperors aren't invincible. Why is it impossible? You've already been dragged off your pedestal. What pride do you have left? Su Zimo stared directly at the God Emperor, aiming to shatter his pride and dignity, tearing away all illusions with cold, hard truth. Let's talk about another condition, the God Emperor finally said after a moment of silence, shaking his head.
Chapter 233, Demon seal.
This is my only condition, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. Why don't we set a time limit? Once I inherit the heaven's will and ascend to the upper realm, I'll release you, you'll be free. Until then, it's just a few hundred years under my command here in the primordial heartlands. If you refuse, your chances of finding the red myriad Tao lotus are less than 1 in 10, and reforging your heavens will become almost impossible. I could compete for the current heaven's will. The God Emperor suddenly looked up, his deep eyes locked on Su Zimo. I haven't given up. Then there's nothing more to say. I'll see you at the peak of the sky. Su Zimo smiled and turned to leave the palace. Halfway out, he suddenly paused, then turned back with a grin. "Oh, I almost forgot to remind you of something. Shouldn't you kill me to silence the witness? Otherwise, once I leave the Elden Lands, news of the God Emperor's return will spread across the entire primordial heartlands. And those 3 Grand Emperors who once ambushed you? The imperial lineages they founded won't let you off. After all, you're no longer the mighty Grand Emperor of old." Hearing this, the God Emperor snorted coldly. "A bunch of petty fools. If they dare come to the Elden Lands, I'll finally get my revenge and bury them all here." The Elden Lands, one of the 10 forbidden grounds, was incredibly dangerous. The God Emperor had his confidence. If the imperial lineages dared come here, they might be destroyed before even reaching the Divine Gate. "You may not fear those imperial lineages," Suzumo said, still smiling. "But what if the entire continent sees the Divine Gate as a public enemy?" "What do you mean?" The God Emperor frowned. "Dao Meridian Crystal Mines," Suzumo enunciated clearly. As the words fell, the God Emperor's aura surged. Boundless imperial force flooded the palace, God power swirling violently around him. At the same time, Paimon let out a cold snort, his demonic aura engulfing the hall, locking onto the God Emperor. "I really underestimated you," the God Emperor said, expression flickering, staring at Suzumo in disbelief. "You chose to build your Divine Gate here in the Elden Lands, one of the 10 forbidden grounds. That wasn't random," Suzumo said calmly. "It's because of the Dao Meridian crystal mines buried deep underground. Dao Meridian crystals were rare and extraordinary. They didn't directly boost cultivation, but they aided in unlocking the body's meridian gates. Everyone knew the human body had 12 meridian gates, the fundamental pillars of cultivation. And the further one progressed, the harder those gates became to open, especially for Empyrean Meridian or God Meridian cultivators. Unlocking new gates didn't rely on effort alone. The resources required were beyond comprehension. This was why rogue cultivators struggled so much. Suzumo himself had once used a 10 meridian fruit, and these Dao Meridian crystals had a similar effect. But the fruit was a universe-tier spiritual medicine, blooming only once every few thousand years, rare beyond measure. No one knew exactly how vast the vein of crystals buried beneath the Elden Lands was. Without them, the Divine Gate would be just another ordinary imperial lineage. In its history, it had produced only one Grand Emperor, the God Emperor. So how could they now have 5 immortal path cultivators? Once word of the crystal mine got out, it would send shockwaves across the entire continent. In his past life, the mines were exposed centuries later. At that time, countless imperial lineages united, along with legions of rogue cultivators, and scoured the Elden Lands. The so-called Forbidden Ground would be ultimately destroyed. Of course, they only dared to attack then because a particularly dangerous entity inside the Elden Lands had already disappeared. "You've really got me backed into a corner," the God Emperor said with narrowed eyes. "Even if I didn't come to you, eventually you would have come to me." "Think about my offer," Suzumo said. "It benefits us both. If things go south, I'll be fine either way, but for your Divine Gate, it'll be utter destruction." The God Emperor fell into deep thought, glancing toward Paimon. Truthfully, he wanted to kill Suzumo then and there, but with Paimon present, he knew it was impossible. Even with all 5 of the Divine Gate's immortal elders, they still wouldn't be Paimon's match. This was the difference between entering the path and becoming immortal. A Grand Emperor was peerless in their age, but someone who had entered the path of Dao like Paimon was of a different class entirely. Unless another sword immortal emerged, there was no contest. After a long silence, the God Emperor finally smiled bitterly. "Fine," he said. "I agree." He turned his gaze toward the distant horizon, his expression deep. He, too, had once been full of pride, standing atop the heavens as the world bowed before him. He wasn't afraid to start over. But if the Divine Gate was destroyed and he became a rogue cultivator again, fighting through a world of geniuses for the heavens will, honestly, he wasn't confident. The road to becoming a Grand Emperor was filled with endless hardship and peril. He knew it well, he had walked it once before. And this time he had a choice. Just a few hundred years under someone's command, and he'd have a clear shot at rebuilding his heaven's will. It was a small price, really, but the God Emperor knew this was more than a deal. It was him surrendering his pride and dignity. When you're ready, let Paimon plant a demon seal on your true fate, Suzumo said. When I ascend to the upper realm, I'll remove it. Go ahead. The God Emperor chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. As Paimon walked over to plant the demon seal, Chaos appeared beside Suzumo, tilting his head in confusion. Master, is this how you tricked me too? Can you call it tricking when it's mutual?
Suzumo replied.
Besides, with your intelligence, could you even be tricked that easily? That's true. Chaos nodded in agreement. Once the mark was placed, Paimon said, just do your job and serve the master well. This demon seal can only be removed by me. Unless your cultivation surpasses mine, you have no other way out. Chapter 234. Filth? The God Emperor nodded slightly and said, then we're now on the same side. I hope you can bring me news of the Red Myriad Tao Lotus soon. I'll look into it when I return to the Divine Gate, Suzumo replied. Also, from now on, call me Master. The God Emperor nodded again, silently. The group exited the palace, which stood at the heart of the Divine Gate. Suzumo looked out at this mysterious Divine Gate. In his past life, when he came here, the Divine Gate had already been overrun by martial cultivators. The place was a ruin, shattered and desolate. The surrounding buildings stood tall, but the Divine Gate itself wasn't built on the surface. It was hidden within a deep abyss beneath the Elden Lands. Because the Elden Lands was forever cloaked in darkness, the architecture here incorporated many luminous void stones to emit light. On this land blanketed by eternal night, whether it was palaces, towering prisons, or floating islands suspended mid-air, every structure gleamed with radiant light. Against the dark background, they were especially eye-catching. They cascaded like waterfalls, sparkled like constellations, and shimmered like a suspended Milky Way. There was no sunlight here. All plants grown in this realm were of the dark attribute. Ghostwood trees, nethergrass, bloodscale flowers. Master Su, are you leaving already? The God Emperor asked.
No rush, Suzumo chuckled.
Besides, you'd really let me walk out of here empty-handed? Aren't you going to prepare some Tao Meridian crystals for me? Don't you feel the least bit guilty? The God Emperor muttered internally. I'm your subordinate now. This entire lineage is basically yours. Who should feel guilty here? Of course, he kept those thoughts to himself. Outwardly, he just smiled and said, Master Su, you may not know this, but mining Tao Meridian crystals is very difficult. After accounting for the Divine Gate's training needs, there really isn't much left. I understand. Suzumo nodded. We're all on the same side now. No need to be so polite. Just toss me a few 100,000 pieces, and we'll call it even. The God Emperor glanced at him, suddenly realizing, this man has absolutely no shame. Master Su, he explained. Each person can only use so many Tao Meridian crystals. The body builds a resistance to them. Around 1,000 pieces is about the limit. More won't help you. I know, Suzumo replied. But what I can't use, I can trade. Come now, don't be stingy. A true Grand Emperor doesn't sweat the small stuff. He patted the God Emperor's shoulder and sighed. You're thinking too small, my friend. What do you mean, Master Su? Never mind that. Just take me to the mine, Suzumo said. The group passed through layer upon layer of space. The Tao Meridian crystal mine was protected by several powerful formations and patrolled constantly by Divine Gate disciples. Escape was impossible, defense was airtight. The God Emperor didn't reveal his identity. After all, aside from a few of the Divine Gate's top figures, no one else knew he was alive. They found an elder to guide them in, and were granted free passage. The mining zone glowed brightly. Specially made torches lined the perimeter, burning a long-lasting sap that gave off a steady light. The ground was covered in pits and tunnels. Many disciples, clothes filthy and disheveled, worked inside the holes. The sound of constant mining echoed all around. Carts full of Tao meridian crystals were pushed out one by one. Su Zimo picked up one of the crystals. It looked very plain. Its glow was hidden, not radiant like other crystals. Each one was about the size of a fist. As Su Zimo began to absorb it, he felt a faint force flow into his body, toward his 7th meridian gate. Though the power was weak, it was consistent and could accumulate over time. "This is just one of our mining sites," the elder guiding them said. "We have dozens like it across the divine gate. Disciples with low talent are often assigned here to mine. But once they dig enough, they're allowed to use some of the crystals to try opening their meridian gates. It's a mixed blessing, I suppose." Su Zimo nodded slightly. Just then, a commotion rose in the distance. The world's spirit force surged, concentrating toward a single point. Spiraling storms of energy swept the area. "Looks like someone's having a breakthrough," Su Zimo smiled. "Let's go take a look." The group approached the scene, where a crowd of miners had already gathered. Everyone whispered among themselves, "The Holy Sun is breaking through again. He's probably in the Paragon Meridian realm now." Of course, the Holy Sun's talent is leagues above ours. Who knows, maybe he's destined to inherit the heaven's will. "But I heard he used to be just like us, a miner." As the crowd murmured, Su Zimo looked toward the center. There sat a black-robed youth, cross-legged on a large boulder. Spirit force howled around him. His black hair danced in the wind, and a dark light glowed from his body. This scene continued for a while, until a loud boom echoed. A meridian gate on his back, the 5th gate of Bloodvale, suddenly burst open. A wave of powerful energy surged from his body. The dark light around him grew ever more brilliant. "He has a battle physique too?" Su Zimo asked, curious, glancing toward the elder beside him. "That's our divine gate's current holy son," the elder replied proudly. "His name is Jiang Tianbai. He started out just like the others, mining because of poor talent. No one expected he'd discover a top-tier physique, the Blackstone Battle Physique, ranked 22nd among the top 100 battle bodies. Since then, he's trained diligently, won the Divine Gate tournament, and earned the title of Holy Sun. Because this physique works especially well with Tao Meridian crystals, he still comes here to train often." "Interesting," Su Zimo smiled. By now, the black-robed youth had completed his breakthrough. He opened his eyes, 2 beams of light flashed out, and let out a long, slow breath. "Tianbai, come here," the elder called out. This elder was highly respected in the Divine Gate, similar in rank to one of the true martial sacred ground's 7 grand elders. "Greetings, Elder Pang," Jiang Tianbai said as he hurried over, bowing respectfully. "Training requires balance, know when to rest. I've seen your efforts, but take time to explore the outside world. You need to temper your heart as well." "I understand, Elder," Jiang Tianbai replied solemnly. His tone brimming with confidence, he declared, "Elder, rest assured, in this lifetime, I will inherit the heaven's will. All obstacles and thorns ahead shall be reduced to mere filth beneath my feet." "Filth?"
Su Zimo chút cờ lai ti.
With a wave of his right hand, the surrounding spirit force surged. Space shattered, and his index finger swept forward, bringing with it a devastating shockwave. Chapter 235, Tao of Time. As that index finger charged toward him with unstoppable force, Jiang Tianbai immediately reacted. Unwilling to show weakness, he struck out with a fist of his own. Spirit force exploded all around. With a loud boom, Jiang Tianbai's body was sent flying backward, crashing hard into a massive boulder. "Care to repeat what you just said?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. "You caught me off guard. Cheap move." Jiang Tianbai stood back up, sneering coldly. "Fine. I'll let you strike first this time," Su Zimo replied.
Jiang Tianbai I Su Zimo Warili.
The man looked about the same age as him. His fists trembled slightly. Though his earlier counterattack was rushed, He had used most of his strength, and yet it hadn't even come close to matching his opponent. What, afraid?
Su Yimo smiled.
Ridiculous. Jiang Tianbai snorted. Dark light began to pulse around him. Spirit force condensed heavily around his body. That faint black glow intensified, eventually turning pitch black. A pure layer of black crystal coated his skin. Behind him, 5 meridian gates opened wide. The aura of the Paragon Meridian realm rippled outward. Amethyst detonation! Jiang Tianbai roared. A brilliant violet light appeared on his right fist, coating the crystal layer. The glow was so dazzling it lit up half of the pitch-black sky. He threw his punch, enhanced by the full might of his Blackrock battle physique, and space itself began to shatter. You're still far too weak. Su Zimo calmly clenched his fist, the power of creation gathering along his arm. With one punch, his power clashed with the violet energy. Crack! Under Jiang Tianbai's shocked gaze, the black crystal armor covering his body shattered, piece by piece. Then a massive force surged into his body, sending him flying once more. The nearby disciples who had been watching the excitement were all dumbfounded. The Holy Sun just got his butt kicked. Su Zimo hadn't struck with full force. He hadn't intended to seriously injure Jiang Tianbai. Now, the black-robed youth got up, staring dazedly at his hands. The Blackrock crystal from his forearms down had completely disintegrated. His expression was one of disbelief. I actually lost, and so easily to someone my age. All my pride shattered. Watching Jiang Tianbai's reaction, Su Zimo said coolly, "Your talent's decent, but your Dao heart is lacking. If you can recover from this defeat, it'll count as growth. If not, you'll never amount to much." The nearby elder chuckled and said, "The kid is tougher than he looks. I believe in him."
Su Yimo nodded.
Just as they were about to leave, Jiang Tianbai's voice rang out behind them. "Can you tell me your name?" Su Zimo turned to see the youth's eyes blazing, not with confusion, but with renewed resolve and fighting spirit. "Su Zimo," he replied. "Is everyone outside this strong?" Jiang Tianbai asked. He had grown up in the Divine Gate. With poor talent, he'd started as a miner like the others. After accidentally obtaining the Blackstone battle physique, he had dedicated himself to cultivation. But he'd never once left the Elden lands. "Not really," Su Zimo said, turning away. "To me, they're all ants." Jiang Tianbai watched him leave until his figure disappeared from sight. Only then did he clench his fists, a fire burning in his pupils. "A Grand Emperor. Is he the one I'll chase for the rest of my life?" After wandering through the Divine Gate for a while, Su Zimo got a general sense of the place. Before leaving, he turned to the God Emperor and asked, "Will you stay in the Divine Gate or come with me?" "I'll remain here for now. When you find news of the Red Lotus, we can meet again," the God Emperor replied. Su Zimo nodded slightly. Exiting the Divine Gate required using a space teleportation array. There was no path out of the abyss, only teleportation jumps. The God Emperor personally escorted him to the top of the abyss. Looking around at the dark, endless expanse, Su Zimo noted how the Elden lands resembled a wasteland. Crumbled ruins and shattered structures from the legendary era lay scattered across the land. Even now, it still whispered of its ancient grandeur. Just as Su Zimo was bidding farewell and preparing to leave, a violent wind howled across the land. Gales shrieked like ghosts, their screams echoing through the heavens. It was chilling to the bone. And then the sun rose. A blazing sun suddenly lit the sky, and light returned to the Elden lands. "What they?" Su Zimo was stunned by the scene. "Looks like your luck's not great," the God Emperor said with a smirk. "What is this?" Su Zimo asked, frowning. "The curse of the ancient remnants," the God Emperor replied. "So this is the curse of the Elden lands," Su Zimo muttered. In the primordial heartlands, anyone who knew anything about the Elden lands had heard of the so-called curse. But few had ever witnessed it firsthand. Except for members of the Divine Gate, of course. What made the Elden Lands one of the 10 forbidden grounds wasn't its ancient traps or the divine gate's presence. It was this terrifying curse that made even heaven retreat. This curse was why the land was sealed off, feared by all. Legend had it the Elden Lands was cursed for half of every year. During that time, all life avoided it. Even the divine gate had to hide deep underground, not daring to emerge. The other half of the year was what Suzumo had seen earlier. Darkness, stillness, death. Best return to your lineage for now, the God Emperor advised. Wait until the curse ends before planning anything else. What is this curse of the ancient remnants exactly? Suzumo asked. Even when you bore the heaven's will, you couldn't break it? There's the Tao of Time embedded in it, the God Emperor replied. Unless I open my 10th meridian gate, I'm powerless to counter it at this level. Tao of Time?
Suzumo blinked.
That reminded him of someone. Chapter 236 Time Emperor. So you figured it out, the God Emperor said with a smile from the side. Time Emperor. Suzumo spoke each word clearly. The only one on the primordial heartland Suzumo could think of who wielded a time-based Tao so powerfully that even the God Emperor was helpless against it, was the Time Emperor. He was the second Grand Emperor of the Imperial era. He wasn't of human origin. Rumor had it he came from a very ancient race known as Greensky. In those days, he ascended to Grand Emperor through the Tao of Time and space. His identity and whereabouts remained an enigma. Very few people had seen his true face. To most, he was the most mysterious of all the Grand Emperors of that era. What does he want? Suzumo asked, puzzled. No idea, the God Emperor replied, shaking his head. Before their eyes, the scenery began to shift. Sunlight poured over the land. The darkness vanished, and what emerged before Suzumo was a vast and desolate plain. The ground was empty, completely barren. Then, everything changed. One day, a group of people arrived on this barren plain. Their clothing was wildly diverse. Some wore animal hides, others garments crudely woven from leaves and branches. After arriving, they began building shelters and bamboo huts. Their cultivation levels weren't high, but as martial cultivators, constructing homes wasn't difficult for them. Soon, neatly arranged houses dotted the plains. What started as a village of a dozen homes gradually evolved into a small town as more people arrived and settled. They lived in peace. Until one day, a beast's roar echoed across the horizon. People rushed from their homes in panic, only to see a massive 9-headed lion slowly approaching from the distance. The lion was terrifying. With a single inhale, its devouring power swept the area. Dozens were sucked into its gaping jaws. Eventually, the humans of the settlement rose up and fought the beast. That battle saw countless homes destroyed and nearly half the population slaughtered. But in the end, they defeated the 9-headed lion. The survivors mourned their dead with sorrow and reverence. They began rebuilding what had been destroyed and constructed larger traps and more elaborate formations, determined to turn their town into an impenetrable fortress. Those who survived the battle gathered and formed a new tribe. They named it Greensky. At this point in the evolving scene, Suzumo watched, wide-eyed. What unfolded before him didn't feel like a mere illusion. It was so real that it was as though he were part of it. This is the origin of the Greensky tribe, he murmured in awe. Yes, the Time Emperor reversed time to show it, the God Emperor confirmed. Once the tribe was named Greensky, its strength steadily grew. As the people cultivated over the years, more powerful warriors emerged, some opening even 7 or 8 meridian gates. Their territory expanded. Eventually, they became powerful enough to slay the primal beasts that once terrorized them. Then disaster struck. The sky turned gray, and a fine rain began to fall. Countless monsters united, gathering tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, to form a tidal wave of destruction. The people of the Greensky tribe fought valiantly to defend themselves, but it was futile. There were simply too many monsters, and they were too strong. In the end, the Greensky tribe was annihilated. Over time, as the ruins of their once great tribe settled into history, the land came to be known as the Elden Lands. So that's the origin of the Elden Lands, Su Zimo murmured. After the vision finished, it began again, starting once more from the first moment the humans arrived on the plane. Like a film looping endlessly, the events repeated. Except unlike a movie, this scene truly existed within the Elden Lands. The road they had come from had vanished. To leave now, one would have to pass through the reenactment itself. Su Zimo and the God Emperor returned to the Divine Gate. Once pulled into the reenactment, escaping was incredibly difficult. People called this phenomenon the curse of the ancient remnants. Those caught in the reenactment usually never made it out alive. Only Grand Emperors could escape it unscathed, and even then, most Grand Emperors were helpless against the Tao of Time behind it. The curse only lasts half a year, the God Emperor said. You can leave when it ends. Prepare a sealed chamber for me, Su Zimo replied after a moment of thought. Inside the sealed chamber, Su Zimo sat cross-legged as the power of creation surged around him. At this point, his true fate world was completely stabilized. Now, with Su Zimo's permission, chaos appeared inside his true fate world, his enormous body taking form in the new land. Gazing at this fresh new world, Chaos exclaimed, "Master, is this the world you created? I promised you once," Su Zimo said, "that the beast race would have its chance. At the beginning of this new epoch, you are the first living being of the primordial Genesis era." "But Master," Chaos asked, puzzled, "how will we grow with just one demon beast me?" "Be patient. You think creating a world is easy."
Su Zimo replied flatly.
Chaos chuckled sheepishly. "Sorry, I'm just a little impatient." Su Zimo waved his hand, and 9 drops of blood appeared in the air over the new world. These were the essence blood drops he'd acquired in the Blood Demon Hidden Realm, later purified through the Pure Moon Altar. Now, their bloodlines were incredibly pure. As the 9 blood drops hovered, the spiritual energy of the God world surged around them. Each drop was enveloped by energy, slowly rotating under the glow of the Pure Moon Altar. The altar's child temple had grown strong, almost equal to the main altar. Life force descended from the heavens, nurturing each drop of blood. For Empyrean Meridian Realm cultivators, they could already regenerate severed limbs. As long as their souls remained, they could recover from almost anything. And beyond that, those in the God Meridian Realm, who had ignited their God flames, could even achieve rebirth from a single drop of blood. Even if only a droplet of blood remained, they could be reborn. That was exactly what Su Zimo intended now. Chapter 237, Re-entering the River of Fate. Su Zimo planned to use these drops of ancient divine beast blood to revive the 9 god beasts of the desolate era. Because the life force used to nurture them was from the God world, once revived, there would be no risk of connection to the primordial heartlands. Of course, a world's life force is limited. Can't be used endlessly to bring things back to life. Su Zimo's main goal was still to find solar illumination, and through its union with Netherglow, discover how to reproduce life. The revival process would take time. While the 9 god beasts were gestating, Su Zimo waved his hand again. A tree descended from the sky, accompanied by a thunderous dragon's roar. It was the dragon tree he had brought from Nether Dragon Ravine. Currently, the dozens of dragon fruits on the tree had stopped maturing due to being uprooted. Now that Su Zimo replanted it in the God world, it would gradually adapt to his planet's rules and eventually bear new dragon gods. These would become the first generation of life native to the God world. Once everything was in place, Su Zimo summoned the power of creation. The primordial chaos bead floated before him, piercing layers of space as he returned once more to the River of Fate. This crystalline river flowed in reverse across the Milky Way, quietly winding across the infinite void. Relying on the power of the primordial chaos bead, Su Zimo dove into the River of Fate. He was heading toward the era when the Time Emperor bore the heaven's will. His goal: to trace the Green Sky Tribe, the Elden Lands, and the origins of the ancient remnant curse. The river flowed gently. Su Zimo moved with extreme caution. Even with the primordial chaos bead, he didn't dare act recklessly. The river of fate recorded eras, not individual years. Time here was measured only in major and minor epochs. Gradually, his figure vanished into the long river. After a very long time, ripples formed across the river of fate. The calm current stirred, and Su Zimo reappeared in midair. The Time Emperor was truly a man of deep affection. Su Zimo murmured, then disappeared again. When he returned to the real world, half a month had passed. The sky was just turning dark. He walked out of his secluded chamber and immediately went to meet the God Emperor. "You're leaving?" the God Emperor asked, surprised. "Yes, I'm leaving now." Su Zimo nodded. "But even with the protection of the Heaven Demon, you can't safely escape this cursed land," the God Emperor warned. "You'll still be in danger. I want to see the curse firsthand." "I have a theory to verify," Su Zimo replied. "You've made up your mind?" the God Emperor asked. Knowing he couldn't stop Su Zimo, he personally escorted him to the surface via the teleportation array. The Elden lands were now completely covered in the looping reenactment. Su Zimo said farewell and walked toward the heart of the cursed zone. Strange spatial fluctuations rippled ahead. Threads of temporal energy filled the air. The time-space laws here were completely distorted. When Su Zimo made contact with the rules, his figure vanished. He felt a massive shock all around him, and his body began undergoing impossible transformations. For a moment, time reversed, he reverted to an infant. In another, he aged into a white-haired elder, experiencing birth, sickness, aging, and death in an instant. After a prolonged state of these transformations, he saw countless points of light appear in the void. He grabbed one and sensed it, but shook his head. Not this one. He continued drifting through the points of light until finally, one made his eyes light up. Spirit force surged as he was pulled into that glowing thread. A desolate plain stretched endlessly under a scorching sun. Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes, scanning the surroundings. He was on a rough dirt path, weeds growing all around. The spirit force here was rich and dense. "This should be the place," he murmured. At the moment, he could no longer sense Paimon or chaos. Finding a spot to rest beside the road, he waited quietly. They should be arriving soon. Not long after, the skies began to change. Spirit force became chaotic, and waves of space fluctuations filled the air. Suddenly, a shout pierced the heavens as a young boy fell out of the sky, not far from Su Zimo. Su Zimo rushed over and began channeling spirit force to heal the unconscious youth. As the boy stirred awake, Su Zimo quickly lay down beside him. The white-robed boy opened his eyes, confused. "Damn time-space turbulence. Did something go wrong?" he muttered. "Shouldn't have messed around like that." He looked around and noticed Su Zimo lying nearby. Checking for breath, he sighed in relief. "Hey brother, wake up. Are you all right?" Su Zimo opened his eyes drowsily and looked around. Where am I? Who are you?" "You don't know?" the boy asked curiously. "Where are you from?" "I'm from the Western region," Su Zimo replied. "I was training in the Eastern continent when a space turbulence suddenly pulled me in. Next thing I knew, I was here. And you are?" "My name's Tianxia," the white-robed boy said. "I'm from the Eastern continent too." He frowned, wondering if he'd dragged someone else into this with his antics. "Oh, I'm Su Zimo. Let's figure out where we are first," Tianxia suggested. "Hopefully it's not too far from the east." Su Zimo nodded, climbed up a nearby slope, and looked toward the horizon. In the distance, a silhouette of buildings emerged on the vast plain. Though still blurry, it was their only option. "Let's check it out." "Nothing else around here," Su Zimo said. Tianxia agreed, and the two headed off together. "This place is way too barren. No idea where the turbulence dropped me," Tianxia grumbled. Eventually, they arrived. It was a well-built, small town, modest but organized. Chapter 238: Time Travel to the Legendary Era. The town looked recently built. The area in front of the gate bustled with people and activity. Tianshi grabbed a passing man and asked with a smile, "Brother, may I ask where we are?" The man immediately stepped back warily and replied, "Who are you?" "We're just two brothers who were attacked and knocked out," Tianshi explained. "Now that we're awake, we don't even know where we are or how to return home." "This place is called Green Sky Town," the man said. "You probably haven't heard of it. I'm one of the first settlers here. It didn't even have a name until we built our homes and named it ourselves. Green Sky Town." Tianshi turned to exchange a glance with Su Zimo. Both shook their heads. "Would you mind telling us which continent this is?" Tianshi continued. "What do you mean, which continent?" The man replied, confused. "There's only one continent on the primordial heartlands." "One." Tianshi froze when he heard that, and his expression suddenly changed as he quickly asked, "Brother, what era is it right now? Hey, are you guys amnesiacs or just confused?" The man chuckled. "Of course it's the first era. Is there any other era? We're doomed." Tianshi collapsed to the ground, stunned and defeated. The division of the primordial heartlands into 5 parts didn't happen until the Desolate Era. In the Legendary Era, the land was still united. "You okay?" the man asked, puzzled by Tianshi's reaction. "We're fine," Su Zimo quickly replied. "My friend's just a little emotionally unstable. He'll be all right." "That's good. My name's Zhang Chong. If you need help, come find me," the man offered before turning to leave. "If you've got nowhere to go, talk to the blacksmith on the east side of town. He's the town chief. I'm sure he'd let you stay. In times like these, we folks need to stick together against the monsters." Once Zhang Chong was gone, Tianshi looked at Su Zimo with resignation. "You said earlier you were from the western region. Looks like we both got swept into a time-space storm and ended up in the Legendary Era." The western region didn't even exist in the Legendary Era. That name only came into being after Tigran Emperor Zhenwu founded the Imperial Era. "So what now?" Su Zimo asked with some concern. "Don't worry. I happen to know a bit about the Tao of Time," Tianshi replied. "Since we don't belong in this long-lost era, the distortion will eventually correct itself. Once it stabilizes, we'll be able to return. Just not sure when." "Guess that's our only option," Su Zimo nodded. "You're from Grand Emperor Zhen Wu's era?" Tianshi asked. "No, the last Grand Emperor in my time was the Mortal Emperor." Su Zimo shook his head. "Mortal Emperor? Never heard of him," Tianshi said, his eyes lighting up. "Wait a sec. Could we be from different minor epochs? How many Grand Emperors were in your era?" Su Zimo paused to think. "A lot, I haven't counted. At least dozens. After all, it's been hundreds of thousands of years since the Imperial Era." "Do you know who was the second Grand Emperor in history to bear the mandate of heaven?" Tianshi asked urgently. Seeing his eager expression, Su Zimo replied, "I think it was someone called the Time Emperor." "Time Emperor, Time Emperor." Tianshi repeated the name, growing more excited by the second. Suddenly, he slapped his leg and shouted, "That's it. That has to be me. I did it. I finally became a Grand Emperor. Are you all right?" Su Zimo looked at him oddly. "Bro, I'll be honest with you," Tianshi grinned. "I'm from the second minor epoch of the Imperial Era. That Time Emperor you mentioned, he's probably me." "What makes you so sure?" "Because in my days, I was the only person who cultivated time and space laws," Tianshi said confidently. "If anyone else had become Grand Emperor, they wouldn't have used that title."
Oh hát, Su Zimo nốt đét Blanly.
"You don't look surprised?" Tianshi stared at him. "I mean, I'm an almighty Grand Emperor. Show a little awe, dude." "So what?" Su Zimo smiled as he started walking into the town. "You're still just a scrub at the Meridian Forging realm right now," he thought to himself. Seems like when Tianshi was accidentally sent to the Legendary Era, he had only just begun his cultivation journey. No wonder he was still weak. "Young man, don't be so arrogant," Tianshi said, feigning seniority. "Treat me well now, and maybe I'll cover your back when we return to the Imperial Era." "Isn't arrogance the whole point of being young?"
Su Yimo rít.
Besides, even if we do go back, our timelines are worlds apart. You'll have already ascended by then. What good would it do me? True, Tianxia admitted, then added. But hey, think long term. Maybe you'll be the next person to inherit the heaven's will. You could ascend and come find me. I'll take that blessing, Su Zimo smirked. They chatted as they walked into the heart of the town. There was a blacksmith's shop, with a new flag flapping above it in the wind. On it were the words, Blacksmith Lin. Inside, a middle-aged man was hammering away at an anvil, the rhythmic clanging echoing out. Su Zimo and Tianxia walked in. Uncle, are you the town chief? Su Zimo asked with a smile. The man turned around, wiped the sweat from his brow, and replied, Two unfamiliar faces. Looks like you've just wandered in too. Yes, we're hoping to settle here for a while. If that's all right, Su Zimo said. Green Sky Town welcomes anyone, the man smiled. After all, strength comes in numbers. But I do have to say, if you're going to live here, you have to contribute like everyone else. No freeloaders. Just let us know what you need. We'll do our part, Su Zimo said. We've got folks handling farming, others building houses, and some hunting monsters outside the town, the man said. Lots of roles need filling. You can pick whatever suits you best. Chapter 239, First Day in Green Sky Town. Just as they were chatting, a shout rang out from outside. Dad, is my 100 steel sword finished yet? Su Zimo turned his head and saw a young woman walk into the shop. She had short hair that barely touched her ears, was dressed in a slightly worn white robe, and carried herself with an energetic, unrestrained air. Her eyebrows were sharp like blades, and her eyes glistened with intensity. She wasn't a stunning beauty, but her looks were above average. Though she wore no makeup, she had a quiet, understated charm, and gave off a carefree, tomboyish vibe. As soon as she entered and saw Su Zimo and Tianxia, she gave them a quick once-over and smiled. New around here? We just arrived today, Tianxia replied with a grin. This is my daughter, Lin Qing. The man beside them added. Ah, I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm Lin Bao, town chief of Green Sky Town. Su Zimo and Tianxia quickly introduced themselves in return. Dad, these two still don't have any work assigned, right? Lin Qing interjected. Why not have them help you out here at the smithy? You've been doing everything alone, and you're also responsible for making tools for half the town. It's way too much. No need. Lin Bao shook his head. The town needs help in all areas. I can manage for a while longer. Farming tools are fine, but we're seriously short on weapons, Lin Qing argued. Those monsters out there can bite through our tools like they're nothing. The townsfolk haven't said much because they don't want to overburden you. But if you let these two help out, you'd lighten your load, and we'd be better prepared. Lin Bao paused, clearly thinking it over. He then looked at Su Zimo and Tianxia. We're happy to help, Tianxia said with a smile. As long as you're willing to teach us, we're willing to learn. Good. Lin Bao finally relented with a smile. No need to be formal. Just call me Uncle Lin from now on. Uncle Lin, the two chimed in respectfully. Lin Qing, take them to find a place to stay. Lin Bao added. Let them rest today. Tomorrow they'll start learning the craft. Come with me? Lin Qing nodded to the two of them. The three walked down the moderately busy main street. The town's architecture was simple and straightforward. The homes were lined up in neat rows, with no courtyards, gardens, or ponds, just one small room per household. From now on, you two are under my wing, Lin Qing said smugly. Since you're my dad's apprentices, technically, I'm your senior sister. Don't mess around, little sister. Su Zimo waved his hand. You're younger than both of us. Age doesn't matter, Lin Qing protested. Seniority is about status, not age. Tianxia, the sun's really bright today, don't you think? Su Zimo said airily, glancing at the sky. Sure is, Brother Su. And this breeze feels rather rowdy too. Tianxia nodded solemnly. The two ignored Lin Qing completely, chatting among themselves while she huffed in frustration. "I'm talking to you too. Did you not hear me?" Neither responded, and they both strolled on, shaking their heads in mock seriousness. By the time Lin Qing had led them to their new quarters, she was fuming and stormed off without a word. Watching her leave, Tianshi muttered, "How could a mighty future Grand Emperor like me be the junior brother of some sassy little girl? What would that do to my imperial dignity?" "Sassy little girl?" Su Zimo chuckled. "If you go by the timeline, she's probably a few eras older than us." "Doesn't matter." Tianshi shook his head. "Did you notice anything strange while walking around earlier?" "Not really," Su Zimo replied. "Everyone here seems pretty weak. The strongest person is probably the town chief, maybe at the true Meridian realm. Most others are in the Meridian Forging or Spirit Meridian realms, or even just the mortal realm. Don't underestimate the legendary era," Tianshi warned. "Some of the monsters here could rival Grand Emperors. We're better off keeping our heads down until the timeline stabilizes and we return to our era. No unnecessary trouble." Su Zimo nodded in agreement. That afternoon, the two explored the area. Within 100 miles of Green Sky Town, there were no other settlements. The townsfolk said there was a large tribe far away, but the journey was perilous, filled with deadly beasts, and no one dared attempt it. At dusk, Lin Qing brought dinner to their quarters. Su Zimo looked at the food, just simple coarse grains. It was clear the people here lived under harsh conditions. "Just so you know," Lin Qing said proudly, "I made these meals for my junior brothers. If you eat them, you admit you're my juniors." Su Zimo and Tianshi exchanged glances. She was clearly still a kid at heart. Given her age and finally having someone to outrank, it made sense she'd be excited. "Then we won't eat," Su Zimo said with a grin as he and Tianshi both turned and flopped onto their beds. Hey, what are you doing?" Lin Qing exclaimed, flustered. "I was just joking. Don't starve yourselves." Tianshi chuckled and pulled a small blue disc from his storage ring, handing it to Lin Qing. "Here, a little gift from me," he said. "Call it a meeting present." "What's this?" Lin Qing asked curiously, turning it over in her hands. "A formation disc," Tianshi explained. "If you're ever in danger, infuse it with spirit force. It'll protect you for a while." "Wow, cool." Lin Qing lit up as she examined it. Formation discs were an invention from the Desolate Era. Before that, people had to manually inscribe formation seals, a slow, complicated process. Formation masters were also often defenseless in combat. "Thanks, senior brother Tianshi," Lin Qing said sincerely. "Right now She suddenly turned to Su Zimo. "Brother Su, don't you feel a little awkward right now? Your mood swings are terrifying." Su Zimo blinked, speechless. "Don't blame him," Tianshi chimed in. "He's just broke. Can't really expect a present." "That reverse psychology is painfully obvious, but I'll bite," Su Zimo chuckled. He channeled his spirit force, and with a wave of his hand, a creature appeared beside him, the nightmare beast. "So cute," Lin Qing squealed, scooping it up into her arms. "Thanks, big bro Su." Chapter 240 Beast Transformation. "This little guy is called a nightmare beast," Su Zimo said. "It not only helps with cultivation, but also has a bit of combat ability. We're poor, so I can't offer anything too fancy, just make do." "Not at all. Actually, I like Brother Zimo's gift even more," Lin Qing said quickly as she cuddled the little beast.
Su Zimo smiled.
He thought he heard the sound of someone's heart breaking. Because the town had limited housing, Su Zimo and Tianshi were sharing a room. A dim candle flame flickered gently in the room. Tianshi was sitting cross-legged, cultivating. After all, the spirit force in the legendary era was still quite abundant. The people here had low cultivation mostly because their techniques were too basic, which slowed their progress. Su Zimo, meanwhile, was snoring away in bed. The moon hung like a silver plate, and the night was unusually quiet. Town patrols walked around the outskirts, and unknown insects chirped from the shadows. As the night deepened, One of the patrolmen had just reached a corner of the town when a huge black shadow suddenly burst up from the ground. Before the patrolman could even cry out, he was swallowed whole by a massive mouth. Then came the sound of bones being crunched. At that moment in Su Zimo's room, the flickering candle suddenly went out. In the darkness, an eerie atmosphere crept in. Tianshi suddenly opened his eyes mid-cultivation. A massive black shadow shot up from the ground, lunging straight at him. "Time slow," Tianshi said coldly. A surge of temporal energy surged from his right hand. As time reversed around the beast, its speed visibly slowed. Tianshi punched forward. An immense wave of force condensed around his fist. With a loud boom, the black shadow was smashed back into the floor, creating a deep crater. "What's going on?" Su Zimo opened his eyes groggily and got out of bed. "Just a bug," Tianshi replied flatly. The candle was relit. The floor had split into several pieces with cracks everywhere. At the center, a giant centipede-like creature lay dying. The creature was about twice the size of a normal human, entirely crimson, with 18 legs and 2 long fangs protruding from its mouth. Its eyes were round and bean-sized. "What is this?" Su Zimo asked. "Not sure. Probably a creature from the legendary era," Tianshi said. "We'll ask Lin Qing tomorrow." The night passed without further incident. Gentle sunlight bathed the land once again. As always, the sun rose faithfully. A shriek shattered the peaceful morning. Dead. All the patrolmen who guarded the town last night were dead. All the townsfolk rushed over. The patrolmen's bodies had been completely devoured. Only bits of flesh and blood remained, staining the ground. Back in Su Zimo's room, Lin Qing looked at the giant beast's corpse in astonishment. "A blaze-fire centipede," she exclaimed. "That's a true vein-level monster, and a very troublesome one. Even my father might not be able to handle it." "Oh, maybe we got lucky," Tianshi said with a smile. "It was dark last night. I must have accidentally hit its weak spot and killed it with one punch. I'm not stupid. You two clearly aren't ordinary," Lin Qing said, narrowing her eyes. "Whatever we are, we're your senior brothers," Tianshi replied with a grin. "The night patrol was wiped out. My father is still investigating the killer. I'll go tell him it was the Blazefire centipede," Lin Qing said as she rushed out. The forge blazed with searing heat. A gentle breeze blew, making the flag hanging outside the blacksmith shop flutter. Lin Bao looked at Su Zimo and Tianshi seriously. "Before I teach you to forge weapons, I need to teach you how to temper metal. Forging is a process of refining and discarding impurities. It requires a strong waist and arms. Since you two killed that centipede yesterday, you clearly have the physical foundation." He pulled a glowing hot iron ingot from the furnace. "Try striking it with a hammer. Even if you're strong, forging isn't easy." Su Zimo and Tianshi exchanged glances. Su Zimo stepped forward and casually struck twice with the hammer. With 2 thunderous bangs, the iron ingot instantly fused together. While hammering, he subtly used Genesis power to alter the metal's internal structure. "Holy dash!" Lin Bao gasped, eyes wide. He walked up to examine the iron, now a nearly flawless ingot. It was hard to believe it had only taken 2 hits. "Are you a forging master?" he asked suspiciously. "You flatter me, Uncle Lin. I'm just a beginner," Su Zimo replied calmly. Then Tianshi tried, landing 2 equally heavy strikes. The ingot was refined again. "For beginners, you're doing well," Lin Bao said, coughing awkwardly. "Still need more practice. Now I'll teach you how to shape weapons, swords, knives, and especially the edge." Both nodded seriously. In less than 30 minutes, Lin Bao's worldview collapsed. When the two handed over their finished swords and blades, Lin Bao could only stare blankly. He couldn't help but sigh. Damn it, real geniuses do exist in this world. He'd spent over 10 years mastering the forge, clinging to the belief that practice makes perfect. But now, seeing the results before him, he could only think, screw that, perfect my ass. As he stood there speechless, Tianshi said with mock humility, Uncle Lin, we know we're untalented, but we're willing to work hard. Lin Bao forced a smile through gritted teeth. You're a real charmer, aren't you? Just then, a man burst in, panic-stricken. Uncle Lin. The hunting party ran into trouble. What? Lin Bao turned, frowning. Lin Qing went out with them. You should come quickly, the man said. That girl, who let her go? Lin Bao's face darkened as he ran toward the town entrance. By the time they arrived, a crowd had already gathered. A bloodied man lay on the ground being treated. He was one of the hunters who had gone out that morning.